Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, I'm Bob from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, as a family-owned company, our goal has been simple: to give our neighbors of the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick out the perfect appliances. We'll take care of everything throughout the sale, delivery, and installation process. And we even have our own in-house service department. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696.
I will open the Monday, August 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It is now 6:15, and I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Julian M. Suso, Town Manager, and MGL C30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation, Julian M. Suso, Town Manager. And to not do so would jeopardize this process. I, as chair, do so declare.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we will return
Does
to
that not to be roll call?
I think it
roll
needs to be
call.
roll call.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Doug, you want to go first?
Brown, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
Taylor, aye, and we will return to open session. The meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It is Monday, August 22nd, 2022. It is now 6:47, and the Falmouth Select Board is returning from executive session. And I do have a statement that I would like to read from the Select Board, and I'll just make a note that on the agenda, this open session does not call for public comment. The Falmouth Select Board worked diligently and tirelessly to bring negotiations to conclusion. The board conducted 10 executive sessions and met with the Finance Committee, Special Counsel, Town Council, and our acting town manager. The board's priority was to bring this matter to its conclusion with the very best interest of the town always at the forefront. And let me just back up real quickly. Our executive session was to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Julian M. Suso, Town Manager, and Mass General Law 30, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation with Julian M. Suso, Town Manager. So I would like to thank the Select Board, the Finance Committee, the town's finance director, special and town councils, and our acting town manager for their work and their commitment to Falmouth throughout this negotiation process. All of the town's officials and town boards worked cooperatively to bring this matter to closure. The unanimous votes by the Select Board and the Finance Committee underscore that this resolution is in the best interest of the town of Falmouth. And at this time, I would ask our special town counsel, Robert Troy, to speak to the specific reason the board chose to enter into this agreement, this mutual agreement with Julian M. Suso.
Bob, if you could come to
Madam
the
Chair,
mic.
I suggest if we proceed to the actions that are on the agenda first, and then I'll.
Then you would
respond to
speak?
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move the Select Board approve and execute the mutual separation agreement and release between Julian M. Suso and the town of Falmouth.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Brown eye?
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Madam Chair, I move the Select Board act on rescinding all documents relating to. I motion to vote to rescind all documents relating to Julian Suso's 2022 performance review.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Brown eye?
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Madam Chair, I motion to vote to rescind the May 12, 2022 resolution to terminate Julian Suso and the June 27, 2022 vote to terminate Julian Suso, and to accept Julian Suso's resignation from employment as town manager effective on August 26, 2022, as provided in paragraph 1 of the mutual separation agreement.
And I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Brown eye?
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
Taylor, aye. And I will note that all three motions were approved unanimously. Special Counsel Troy?
ask the board, before I speak, if you can, and each initial on the first page, and then sign on the next page, and then the acting town administrator is gonna make copies, be available as public records.
Bob, for your statement, if you could use this mic, or you could sit at the table if you'd prefer.
And we are signing both. We are initialing the dates, and we are signing in the back, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And date next to your signatures, today's date.
Thank you.
I will.
Why are there double initials? Oh, because there's two
There
changes.
are
I guess
two
I gotta put
changes.
another one on there.
Yes,
That's-
you need to initial both. They're just
Alright.
date changes, you need to initial both.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
I realized the same thing, that's why I got it back.
I think this one, I'm not sure.
I only put one on the
Yes,
first.
if you could do both, that would be great. And Mr. Johnson, stop, if you could just,
Oh, do you want that back?
Yeah.
to. You can just double check. Each select board member needs to sign both, initial both dates, and I have added the date of August 22nd to both documents. They complete. Attorney Troy?
Yes, members of the Select Board, ladies and gentlemen, this statement is an effort to bring transparency to the 10 lengthy executive sessions that the Select Board has done behind closed doors, because the public is entitled to know why the Select Board made the decision it has made tonight in deciding that it's in the best interest of the town of Falmouth to execute and enter into this agreement. But before that, I want to observe that in addition to the Select Board's executive sessions, there were many public sessions that the Select Board held, and there were many, many meetings which involved extensive contributions by town council, the acting town administrator, the finance director, the chairman of the finance committee, and in addition to that, as you well know, there were meetings between with members of the Select Board, representative of the Select Board, and the Finance Committee. It's important to note that there was unanimity throughout the process by all town officials who assisted in this process, and that all of the votes, which will ultimately be made public when the minutes of the meetings are revealed, were votes which were unanimous. There was no disagreement about the outcome, that this decision was not in the best interest of the town. So very briefly, there were three factors which the Select Board emphasized in deciding to make its decision. The first, resolution and finality, as opposed to continuing conflict. The Select Board determined that it was critical that this issue be resolved now in an expeditious fashion so that town officials and the different boards of the town could focus on important concerns about Falmouth's future that go beyond tonight's decision. Second, the Select Board determined after a review of outcomes in similar disputes that the town faced potential liability in multitudes of the agreed-upon lump sum payment of $235,000 that is reflected in the agreement that you have just executed tonight. It should be noted that prior to this agreement being reached, because of various provisions of the Town of Falmouth Charter and practices dealing with separated personnel, there were additional monies paid that were separate and apart from this proceeding. There were numerous offers of settlement by both parties, and ultimately a consensus was agreed. The decision is a mutual one between the town and Mr. Suso, and both the town and Mr. Suso are issuing and executing and agreeing to broad releases of any and all claims against each other to leave this matter settled and leave it behind. Finally, the Select Board determined that resolution of this matter was significant to the obligation of the town to provide effective and efficient day-to-day operations. In similar controversies, there were efforts made to continue the person who was in office at the time of the separation in power. And this uncertainty creates problems for the position of the chief administrative officer of the town and casts a shadow on the process of appointing a successor town manager. The Select Board wanted to leave that behind and to resolve this issue and end any controversy as of tonight, which it has done. Resolution of this matter provides the town now with a green light to conduct business of the town in an efficient manner without any distractions relating to any other disputes. Once again, the many members of the Select Board the many members of the town staff and the assistant town administrator, town council, the finance committee, and the chair of the finance committee are very much appreciated. As you know, this has taken many months, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to represent the town of Falmouth in assisting you to come to this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Troy.
Joint statement. This is a joint statement that's available here.
We do have a joint statement that is available in paper form. If anyone is interested in getting one, you can ask our acting town manager, Peter Johnson-Staub, for a copy. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor by roll call?
Brown, aye?
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Sounds good.
Taylor, aye. Thank you. Good evening. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Falmouth Select Board on Monday, August 22nd, 2022. It is now 7:07, and I would ask that you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that you please silence your cell phones and notify the chair if you are making a video or audio recording of this open meeting session. The placement and operation,
Nancy, you have two people that raised their hands.
thank you, of a recording equipment should not interfere with the conduct of the meeting, and the two of you are recording. Is that correct? Thank you. Recognitions.
I'd just like to recognize the organizers of the Falmouth Road Race. I thought they did a great job this year, right down to the care that they give to their runners. They're watching all the time, and as they come across the finish line, one of the runners was just collapsing. People ran out and caught him before he fell, helped him down to the end, and there was a few runners that were struggling as I was there at the end, but just the way that they really managed the whole thing, and really, safety is first, so I think that was a good job, so thank you.
I think right along with that is to recognize the Falmouth Fire Department and the Falmouth Police Department. I think things went very well and went smoothly in terms of the police, although it was a long day. However, I think the Falmouth Fire Department did have quite a few medical issues that they needed to attend to, so.
Sure they did. The Sheriff's Department was there,
I
too.
appreciate them.
And could I add the DPW here in town that supported this whole event, throughout the week? They certainly were there on duty, and I saw them active on Sundays, so they were working overtime to make sure that this event was smooth and represented us well.
Well said, thank you.
Point.
Any other recognitions? I'll move on to announcements. Any announcements from the board?
I don't have an event announcement, but I'd just like to make a note that I've noticed a lot of people are putting out the recycling bins backwards, or not really at the roadside. And when the guys come by with the trucks, they have to still bring two people, because they're dragging the bins out closer to the road and turning them around. And the idea with those new bins is that they'll be automated, and eventually they may be able to have the truck staffed with one person and that'll be very helpful for efficiency. So if people could just keep in mind that those bins should be pointed out toward the road. It says this side toward the road, it's right on the top, so.
There's a lift bar that goes horizontally where the automatic lift gets underneath of it, so that should be out facing the road.
Right.
So the truck can pull up, it automatically goes under there and lifts the container up and dumps it in the top of the truck.
Thank you. Any other announcements from board members? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board may not participate in discussion of this topic. It is not appropriate to use the public comment period to comment on any person's reputation, character, physical condition or mental health, disciplinary matters, or civil or criminal charges. Comments about job performance and decisions made are permissible. Please just remember that we cannot get into a conversation with you at public comment. Hello.
Good evening, members of the Select Board. My name is Deborah Clark. My husband and I are full-time residents at 16 Studio Way in Precinct 6. I'm here to ask that the town address a chronic problem with the 105-year-old water line on Little Island Road that went in 1917. The water main at the bottom of the hill has broken multiple times in years past, and it's broken 3 times in the last 18 months. This caused a loss of water to 40 homes, with many others losing water on nearby streets when it was shut off for hours while repairs were made. I did bring 5 pictures, which are in that red and white PDF on the left, but I don't know how to open it. Hopefully you will.
And I believe every board member has received the pictures. Am I correct? Okay.
Absolutely.
No, that's not it. Commission.
It's the red and white one that says water.
There it is.
I'm going to stop your time.
Thank you. 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Unless you want to hear me say it really, really fast.
So this is just a PC, so you can advance
So
the
just
slides?
tell me how to do it. This is that's it?
There you go.
Okay.
So that
It's only
forward.
5 pictures.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The Water Department is well aware of the problem, given the frequency and the expense of the emergency repairs. They already have a design plan for the replacement of the line and the hydrants. It just awaits funding. I'm asking you to provide specific funding for this project out of the annual Public Works budget. So this picture is when the break was discovered the last time 4 weeks ago at 11 at night. Water wasn't restored until 1:30 the next day. The main gushed fresh water into the marsh on both sides of the road for 11 hours straight. Let's see, photo 2 shows the water bubbling up around the old repair in the road from the last couple years. It always breaks in the same place. Photo 3 shows the flood area with daylight before they were able to repair it, just to give you an idea of the expanse we're talking about. There's only one way in and out of the neighborhood by that break. The residents are trapped either in or out, wherever they are when the water does break, and then by the repair trucks for hours until it's fixed. Of course, it's inconvenient, but it also poses a fire risk as well as a safety risk if someone needs emergency treatment at that time. Photo 4, that upper part just shows you the size of the kind of break we get in this. It's huge. Photo 5 shows what the workmen have to go through and how deep to fix this every time they have to do it. The situation has been given a lick and a promise for far too long. I respectfully request that the Select Board allocate funding for this project from the annual budget and direct the acting town manager and the Water Department to proceed with the repairs as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other public comment? Mr. Moriarty?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dave Moriarty, lifelong resident of Falmouth, Massachusetts. Distinguished board members, citizens, public, people at home. I have a public comment for you. I had the opportunity last week to attend the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board meeting. And it was brought to my attention on several occasions during that meeting that The Mayflower Wind is still pursuing their cables in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and they haven't stopped at all, and they're still trying to work as hard as they can to shoehorn these cables into Falmouth. And it was a little disconcerting because I wrote a letter to the board a few months prior, and they said that they weren't working with Mayflower Wind. So which is it? Are they? Aren't they? What's going on here? It was a very informative meeting. I'm still surprised why Falmouth has not asked to become an intervener. I would hope by now, knowing all that you know, and by that at this time, that maybe our attitudes in Falmouth would change and we would be more interested in protecting the economic future of Falmouth and the safety of its children. It's really the only way a town can reasonably protect itself. I'm sorry, I'm not too organized today. From the economic hardship, all right, okay? I plan on becoming an intervener myself. I had hoped this wouldn't be necessary for me to get involved. I'm really tired and I need to get back to work. I had no idea that chasing around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the last 2.5 decades would end up becoming my life's work. But I'd appreciate if the board could please take a look at the Florida EMF regulations. I think it should be adopted here in Falmouth and throughout the state of Massachusetts. I realize the town is being pressured by the federal government, the state, Beacon Hill, and other renewable sources. But let us not forget who we need to protect and how we got into this mess and not get fooled again, especially what they did to us with the turbines. You know, the federal government knew back in 1987 that it was impossible to site industrial turbines in residential neighborhoods. They did
Moriarty,
this experiment in Boone, North Carolina.
You're over time.
Well, okay. I just have, it's just not a very flattering look for the town of Falmouth or the state of Massachusetts. This is an awfully dangerous and expensive way of governing, if you ask me. It is now impossible for all the mothers in Falmouth to agree to ignore the hard facts that they have been presented to them and the rest of the town. I write to encourage the board to examine and take another look at this project. And please, please become an intervener in this matter so we can protect ourselves and our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else here for public comment? Okay, we will move on to our town manager's preliminary report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, you have 2 flow-neutral bylaw variance hearings. The first is for 159 Main Street for Blue Moon Sea Grill. The variance is requested to redevelop what is now retail space into a 130-seat restaurant. Water Superintendent Amy Lowell has provided a referral stating that the sewer has sufficient capacity to accommodate the additional flow. The Board of Health referral states that there is not sufficient space on the property to fit a Title V system. And that is one of the criteria for the variance under the bylaw section 180-56. However, the bylaw does provide for a variant that the bylaw does allow for the select board to approve the variance, even though it does not meet the requirements of the being able to cite a Title V septic system.
Attorney Ament, we are not opening the hearing just yet.
Excuse me?
We are not opening the hearing just yet.
Thank
We're
you.
doing the town manager's preliminary report, and then we have committee interview ahead of you, and we start at 7:30. So just give us a few more minutes. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. So looking at the select board criteria for approving a variance, one of the criteria for issuing a variance is economic development, and the proposed restaurant would undoubtedly increase employment, and generate meals tax revenues that the current retail space is not generating. And the board just recently received from the applicant through Mr. Ament, Attorney Ament, a number of signatures in support of the application. We also received a letter from the Chamber of Commerce in support, from Michael Kasparian, the Director of the Chamber of Commerce, in support of this variance request. Next on your agenda is the second flow-neutral bylaw variance for 13 Davis Straits from New Creek LLC, and that LLC is owned by the Kimco Corporation, or a subsidiary, so you will hear the term Kimco being referenced. Just thought I would mention that as we move forward with that discussion. The proposal here is for a redevelopment of a portion of Falmouth Plaza, which would replace the former Friendly's, Staples, and 3 additional storefronts with 156 rental apartments, 39 of which would be affordable. Wastewater Superintendent Amy Lowell has provided a referral stating that the increased sewage flow would exceed the capacity of the lift station, which the flow from this property would go to, and could potentially cause sewer backups. She initially recommended that the board defer action on this item until a formal engineering evaluation of the lift station could be completed. An update from my written report: Amy and I met with representatives of the Kimco Corporation and Attorney Ament, and we talked about the possibility of a contingent approval of the variance. We're not ready to recommend that at this time, but the board may wish to consider continuing the hearing to see if attorneys from the town and the applicant can reach an agreement that would protect the towns from any liability with respect to a contingent approval of the variance. So you will be hearing more about that. Moving on to, still on this, this variance request, the Board of Health referral has not been received, and that is because the size of this project, the volume of wastewater, exceeds 10,000 gallons per day, which is beyond the scope of the Board of Health under Title V. So again, under the flow-neutral bylaw, the Board of Health is asked to make a determination whether a Title V septic system could be sited on the property. One might say the answer to that question is no, because just by the nature of the volume required, this project would not be eligible on any property for a Title V septic system. It would go to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection for a groundwater discharge permit. We do not have a formal review of a groundwater discharge permit at this site. I would just say it is a very large site, and it is certainly conceivable that such a system could be sited on this property. But again, we have no Board of Health referral. We have no technical evaluation of that question. It may be a circumstance that was not contemplated when the flow-neutral bylaw was written. One other thing I did want to mention on this proposal is that the proposal, in that it is on the same parcel, has commercial development and is proposing residential development and is proposing a substantial number of affordable rental units, is consistent with the town's planning vision for this area under the Mixed Residential Commercial Overlay District, and that certainly affordable housing is one of the board's priorities. So that's something the board may wish to consider as it considers that variance request. And we have a third hearing tonight, which is a change of officers for a liquor license for Captain Kidd Restaurant on Water Street, and all of the requirements for that application have been met. We have no staff concerns with that application. Moving on to the business portion of the agenda, we have 2 change of manager applications for liquor licenses. They're on the agenda so the board can meet the managers and remind them of their role under the liquor license applications. We then have a report of the Human Services Committee, annual meeting with the Select Board, followed by the Commission on Substance Use and their annual meeting with the Select Board. And that brings us to the operating budget, financial policy, and capital plan presentations, which Jennifer Mullen, Finance Director, will make. Jennifer and I drafted the FY24 operating budget policy, which will allow us to provide clear instructions to department heads for submitting a level service budget, which does not require any Proposition 2.5 override. The policy also recognizes that the board may wish to consider budget priorities in the coming months and may wish to consider additional funding sources to address priority needs above and beyond a level services budget. The Select Board fiscal policy, which is referenced as a financial policy on the agenda, provides a policy foundation that guides annual decisions and was last updated in 2017. The only substantive change to that policy this year is the addition of the policy adopted by the board earlier this year to allocate a portion of room occupancy excise taxes, also known as hotel motel taxes, including the short-term rental taxes, and the board voted to allocate a portion of those to affordable housing and to the school department. The proposed capital improvement plan recommends spending of $9.7 million, which is nearly $2.4 million more than last year. To fund these requests, we recommend applying approximately $1.5 million from the Capital Stabilization Fund for the purchase of an engine, a fire engine, and an ambulance for the Hatchville Fire Station, which is in the design process, as the board is aware. And I would note that Chief Smith has advised that it is anticipated it could take up to 2 years to acquire the new engine and the new ambulance. So there's quite a lengthy timeline between the authorization of those funds and delivery of that equipment. The last item on the business agenda is a proposal to authorize additional Barnstable County ARPA grant applications. The county is receiving $41.3 million in ARPA funds, of which Falmouth would have received about $6 million if the funds had been allocated to the towns by population. The board has previously authorized a grant, excuse me, a grant sorry about that. The board has previously authorized a grant application for $1.3 million for wastewater treatment facility upgrades. This represents the full amount the county has earmarked for Falmouth to date. The county recently made additional funds available to municipalities for grants up to $500,000. I will ask the board to consider authorizing additional applications as explained further in a memo in your packet, and we can discuss that when that agenda item comes around. On the consent agenda, there were no concerns raised by staff. Review of these items, and I recommend approval of all those items.
Thank you. We have an interview, vote, and appoint committee member to the Board of Health. Is John Waterbury here?
Yes.
We have one position open with a term ending 6/30/25. I think you're fairly well known to us, but do we have questions from the board?
I don't have any questions. I'm just thankful that John's still willing to do the work.
You're here, and thanks for all your past work. Your expertise is very much appreciated.
Well, I'm getting a little long in the tooth, but I think I'm good for 3 years.
I'll
good
entertain a
company.
motion.
I would so move that we appoint John Waterbury to the Board of Health for a 3-year term ending 6/30/2025.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Okay, we can take a look at our hearings. Attorney Ament, you can set up now.
Can I read the hearing, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Notice is hereby given that the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 22nd, 2022, at 7:30 PM in the Select Board Meeting Room, Town Hall, Falmouth, MA, on the application of Blue Moon Sea Grill, Inc. for a wastewater flow variance under Chapter 180, Section 56 of the Code of Falmouth, the so-called flow neutral bylaw, for increased flow for a proposed restaurant at 159 Main Street in said Falmouth, parcel 47A0707000. For order of the Select Board, publication date Friday, August 5th, 2022, Falmouth Enterprise.
Thank you. Attorney Ahmet?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For your record, I'm Bob Ament. I'm a Falmouth attorney. I represent the applicant, Blue Moon Sea Grill, and John Risciardi of the Risciardi family is here in the front row. John manages Sopranos Casino Restaurant in Falmouth Heights, and his family is well known in the restaurant business with restaurants in Mashpee and in Falmouth. And they'd like to create a seafood restaurant, a high-class dining establishment here in Town Hall Square, right down the parking lot at the beginning at 159 Main Street, which a lot of us still think of as the former Vincent Associates building, but that's where it is. What's particularly nice about this proposal, I think, and as you know, my office is right next door, so I'll go by this site multiple times every day, is the outdoor dining space that will be created. And Horiuchi and Celine, Falmouth Landscape Architects, have prepared what you see on the screen, showing that there would be a deck installed along that presently unattractive space that's between the building and Town Hall Square. It's a space of about 14 feet. It is a right-of-way, but it's never used, and the parties who have rights to that right-of-way have all consented with legal documents to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds to this use of that area. There's access to the back of the building from the other direction and off of Main Street. So there'd be 50-some seats on that dining deck, and the proposal would be to re-landscape that area with your license, which we'd come back and request, seek to beautify that area. It's presently not very attractive, and we think it will be the nicest outdoor dining spot in town, set away from Main Street, going away from the town, from Main Street along Town Hall Square. Now, the total number of seats inside and outside is proposed to be 125 seats. And of course, that must be connected to the town sewer because the property is on the town sewer. And it's an increase, so an increase of more than 10% of flow from existing uses requires the Select Board's variance. The standard for granting that variance is basically the same whether one can put a Title V system on the lot or not. It's in your sole discretion to allow this expansion of the use of the sewer. Now, there will be public benefits. Mr. Risciardi estimates that the meals tax generated from the restaurant would be between $150,000 and $200,000 a year. It's really quite a substantial amount year after year and benefiting the town. He estimates that depending on the time of the year, of course, there could be 20 to 40 people employed in the restaurant. The property has already been improved by the owner, and this would be a further improvement of the property to create this, this dining deck. You have not only the 25 or so letters from Falmouth residents who have indicated their support. We have a petition which I can give with you. It's not signed by a lot of people, by about 50 more people. I also can show you a sample menu, but maybe some of you haven't had dinner, and it really looks like it'll be a wonderful thing to have. So I'll give you both of those before I'm done. You have a letter also from the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I think what he says really is much the argument that we have about this. And that is that he says, and I quote, "The continuous, ongoing renewal and vitality of Main Street is of utmost importance to our business community and to the town in general. We respectfully urge the Select Board to continue to allocate available sewer capacity to the area." And he says that the Chamber enthusiastically submits their letter on behalf of Mr. Ricciardi. Now, the Chamber of Commerce notes that there are traffic and parking issues in downtown. Those really aren't the purview of the Board of Selectmen, but it's a factor that the Zoning Board of Appeals will take into account. This is a by right use, a restaurant in the Business 1 district, but we need a special permit in this case because we don't have parking. There's none available on the site, as is true with almost all of the restaurants on Main Street. And yet, restaurants have recently been approved both by, for their sewer hookup, like Estia, which has 203 seats and only a few parking spaces, and they have a sewer connection. New Oyster Bar on Main Street across from the library received approval from the Board of Selectmen similarly. What the Chamber says, and I think it's right, is that the customers are here. They're already here. And another restaurant isn't going to bring many more people to Main Street. In fact, it's, and the Chamber suggests that another restaurant might even relieve some of the waiting time that people have sometimes to dine in the restaurants in Falmouth. And theoretically, if people could dine more quickly, they might be able to turn over parking spaces more quickly. But another quality restaurant in town, we don't think will have deleterious effects. We think it will be an improvement, and certainly an improvement to the entrance to Town Hall Square. The plan provides for handicap access, which the building presently doesn't have. That's a benefit. The handicap access would be built into the dining deck. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them, but we obviously hope that you'll approve this request. The wastewater and superintendent did mention that there would need to be a grease trap installed on the property to separate restaurant grease from what goes into the sewer, and Falmouth Engineering is working on a plan to do just that.
Questions from the board?
Just
Mr. Patterson?
curious question. How high is the deck off of the ground?
The deck is very close to the level of the existing stone wall. The existing stone wall is maybe a foot above the ground level. The deck, I believe, is either level with the deck or might be a foot more. The deck will end up being at the same level as the first floor of the building to which it's attached. Hence the handicap access up onto the deck and then right into the to the building.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Brown?
Just a comment that I didn't get to read all the letters of support, but I did see the email saying that they were contained. We did have another letter also from another resident who pointed out, actually, a person very involved in sewering, George Horfelder, who pointed out that this approval would kind of take up the capacity of another 20 houses, potentially. In the past, I've always spoken in favor of development on Main Street and approval of these variances, and I'm still inclined to do that. I just wanted to make that point, that it was a letter that we did receive, and it's a valid concern. But I'm very hopeful still that our wastewater plan committee will continue to identify discharge sites, and we will continue to have capacity to treat and discharge sewage. So I don't feel any real differently. I'm just acknowledging that we do have this concern.
Any other questions from the board? Go ahead.
Attorney Ahmed, have you made any arrangements for the did you say 40 additional people that would work there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I have talked to Mr. Ricciardi about that, and their intention is to provide a shuttle service, as they do at their another Falmouth restaurant, so that their employees aren't dependent on finding spaces here.
And you anticipate that being taken up by the zoning board as part of that?
Yes,
special
we've got
permit?
our job ahead of us, which is to convince the zoning board of appeals that this will work and they should waive parking. Now, they've done that repeatedly. As the chamber notes, the chamber is working on, with the business community. I think that's great. What the town did recently is to make an arrangement with Martha's Vineyard Savings Bank, so there are quite a few spaces behind their bank now available for public parking. I suspect that those are not being used very much. I don't know that. Most of the time, when the restaurant is busy, at least on weekends and most evenings, there actually would be a lot of spaces behind Town Hall Square that might be available. Might also have to, depending on hearing schedule, that's an issue. But I think there are some solutions like that besides the more complicated but important solutions, such as a shuttle service, perhaps from the Lawrence School. And these all raise problems, but it's a problem we have now. It's not a problem created by this restaurant. But we have thought about not wanting to bring a lot more employees to your spaces. As someone whose office is right here in Town Hall Square, I share that concern.
You'd be willing to give up one of your spots anyway,
well,
right?
Sure.
That's what I figured.
But we're going to work on that problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I do have those menus. I have the petition. I'll give them to you, just because I said I would.
Another question, and then I'd like to get public comment.
Just to follow up on Mr. Zelinski's comment, I had trouble finding a parking spot here tonight. So with the new timber bar and, town is busy, so it is something we're going to have to think about, and maybe the zoning board might have to take it up, or we might take it up, that at some point we might have to put up a sign, parking for town business only. I don't know.
That's what they do.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
It's getting to be a concern.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions from the board, we'll entertain public comment on this matter. Ms. Harlow-Hawks, we'll start with you, Mr. Neto, and then we'll take you, sir.
I was actually Maury Harlow-Hawks, Precinct 6 West Falmouth. I was going to actually speak on the next one, but a couple questions came up with this one. The parking and all that is all zoning issues. My big concern is when I hear that Mr. Hufelter, I think, brought up a huge point. And every time a variance is given for this flow control, we are taking houses that were in the original plan of the sewering of this town and giving it to somebody that basically jumped ahead of line. And I think that's disingenuous for the people that are waiting for sewering. The capacity at that sewer treatment plant is on the brink of destruction at this point. I'm sure some of you probably listened to the Buzzards Bay Coalition. Many times it's not even operating, 40% of the time it's not really operating as it's supposed to. I know that Ms. Lowell, said this one would, this could get the variance for the flow control versus the one on Davis Straits, but it's still taking a valuable resource away from the original plan. And if we don't stick to the plan, it's going to be a real sticky wicket at the end when all these areas that were originally in the sewering, now theirs has been taken up by 125-seat restaurant and you're also talking about employees. This was a little real estate office with probably 6 people in it. Now you have 125 seats, 45 employees. It's just a lot of flow. And what is the gallonage of a daily flow in over the year? Is there a number for that? Could you give that to us?
It's 35 gallons per day according to Title V.
It's
Per seat.
no, I asked for the total number. I was going to say 35 gallons.
All right, Maury, can you just direct your questions here?
Okay, I'm sorry. How many
Please, thank
gallons
you.
per day will that generate for a variance?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And over a course of a year.
We have it right here, it's about 4,900.
Right.
But at peak.
A day?
Yeah, the peak, if it was fully maxed out.
So roughly 5,000.
A little less, yep.
Yes. Mr. Neto?
I'd like to offer something here that I think the Board of Selectmen definitely has to think about. You cannot expand any business on Main Street without having parking being an issue. I too had Mr. Riccardi, we both arrived at the same time, we couldn't find a parking spot, and we had to park at Mr. Ahmed, so thank you. That was the last spot that was open. So two things I'd like the board to consider so we can solve this problem, because a viable Main Street is important to the economy of the town of Falmouth. And I never thought I would say this, but two things. The first one, yes, I firmly believe. Put the parking meters back on Main Street. Not only is it a source of revenue for the Falmouth taxpayer, but it definitely will turn over parking. Which you have a 3-hour limit. I don't know of anyone that goes to a restaurant and sits down for 3 hours anymore. There's a line at the door. It reminds me of being back in the Army. When you sat down, there was always a line waiting. But the other one's going to be a shocker. This I never thought I would say. I think we should start looking at a municipal parking garage on the Eastman block. We just don't have any more square feet to park cars. And I hate to say it, but I never thought I would say that. And that would answer, I mean, you have the Astia, you have this restaurant that's going to be open. And by the way, some of us remember that not as Vincent, but as the Seven Seas. And I'm sure there was a lot more people in there than Vincent Real Estate. And that's the history of the building. But I think the parking issue, if you're going to develop Main Street, and there's a lot more development to come, as we'll speak in the next variance. But give it some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neto. Yes, sir?
My name's Dave Millett. Just a general question. He mentioned another bar that they own in town. Do you know what the bar is?
Sopranos.
Sopranos.
The Heights.
In the Heights, Falmouth Heights.
I mean, like, there's no parking here. I mean, I don't understand it. And how are you going to get that many people in there? And what time are they going to close? I mean, I live nearby. I can't imagine a restaurant with that many people in there. And there's no parking. I mean, and also, never mind the septic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So, good evening, Select Board. Please bear with me. This is new for me, but I have to speak out. I come to you, and also forgive me from...
Introduce yourself, please, just so we know who you are.
Oh,
We
I'm
need your
sorry.
name.
I have that here at the top of the list,
Perfect.
and my nerves have... Linda Samortos.
Thank you.
I come to you looking for peace of mind and in pain. Hopefully for peace in the neighborhood. My neighborhood, which I will speak to, and pain from a healing, torn Achilles, certainly not caused by running in our wonderful race yesterday. And also pain caused by timber, the axe bar, which my condo at 137 Main is directly behind. 137 Main was formerly Kendall Printing back in the day, actually in the 1940s. Has previously housed a furniture showroom, a storage facility warehouse during the war. It was purchased by Bill Peters and renovated for Kendall Printing. So back to current times, 137 Main is literally in a parking lot. It houses 2 condos. My neighbors, Dave, who just spoke, and his partner, are here tonight as well. 137 was developed by Charlie and Kerry Mazat, very familiar names in this town, a wonderful developer. I rented from them after selling my home of 24 years in West Falmouth. I am now a co-owner at 137, buying my unit along with my friend and colleague, Richie Mehta, who owns Port Cargo at 156 Main Street, a woman's boutique, and who has been, along with his family, a very successful presence on Main Street for over 40 years. I have worked at Port Cargo for 23 years. Richie and I closed on 137 in December of 2021. Therefore, we were not involved in the proposal for timber, the Axpar, and the granting of a 1 p.m. entertainment license. Loud bass music, now a DJ, or piped in till 1 a.m. Why? I don't understand. I certainly would have had something to say if I was involved in it at that time. I want to thank you again for indulging me on speaking to this matter, as it involves Mr. Bogajian of Longfellow Construction, who with partners is involved with timber and now owning the block at 159 Main, where his showroom for his property on the island is, in the site of the proposed Blue Moon, actually across from my employment. The renovation for that showroom, previously Vincent Associates, was a disaster, blocking the easement to Main Street from behind where 137, my dwelling, is. The easement is in our deed. It was blocked for months with Longfellow signage, trucks and debris, construction workers from before 7 a.m. to sometimes 8 p.m., much to my chagrin. And that was then. What about now? If there is no respect for neighbors from timber, and no anticipated respect from Blue Moon Construction, more noise, and again, most probably no access to easement. Why are some exempt from the rules? Like I said, this is all new to me. Why do I have to have non-emergency police dispatch number in my contact list, which I call when the music is blaring, for the noise, for timber, the Axpar, only to be told over and over again that they have their license till 1 p.m. Who agreed to that? 1 a.m., excuse me. Who? I don't understand your thinking, knowing that there was a residence. My bedroom is the back of their building, probably 20 feet. I am told by the police it has to be heard at 100 feet to be a violation, please. It's futile and exhausting and hellish, as I am 75 years old. I know you find that hard to believe, but I am. And on the nights that music is blaring, I don't get to sleep until 3 because I'm so wound up, and have to take 2 sleeping pills and have to get up the next morning to go to work for 10 a.m. It's awful. It's awful. The construction of Blue Moon will be yet another form of ruination and destruction, if not addressed. The back of my yard out of timber, as I said, 20 feet. And if he soundproofed it, Mr. Bogajian, it would be easily done for him, as he is in the construction business. My former husband, who was a developer, was in the construction business as well off Cape. I know it can be done. It's what he does. I know tonight's meeting is for the wastewater flow, which I missed the initial beginning because I am moving very slow from not sleeping. So I can't, I listened to what Mr. Amen had to say, and I'm starting to understand what that means. Also, I'm confused because I would think at 137, being that we were neighbors, we would have been notified by letter of this meeting. I just happened to see it in the Enterprise, which I love our little paper. But believe me, I've never done a letter to the editor, but I'm going to start. I happened to see it 2 weeks ago and screenshotted it to my neighbors. So I'm going to wrap by saying I love Falmouth. I live in a fabulous condo in a parking lot by choice. But please remember, more importantly, it is a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting me go over time. I'm sure it was. I'm long-winded and Italian. And pissed off.
Any other public comment? Yes.
So we co-own 137 Main
I need
Street,
your
Meg
name.
Maggio, Margaret
Okay.
Maggio, and we co-own that space at 137 Main. And I don't understand how anyone can imagine that this is environmentally correct. It's so incorrect. The Sitter's Pond has water that comes in behind timber and behind us. There is no way that you can put in that much additional sewerage and not affect the water flow and the environment. There's no way. That sewage, the amount of capacity you're talking about, is going to change the face of Main Street forever. Main Street should not look like Casino by the Sea. We all know how that went. And bringing this, there's no reason for this size capacity, for this amount of sewerage, for this amount of construction. The only reason is money, pure greed and money. The capacity is totally wrong for that site. I don't care how many people you can, how many tables you can squeeze in there to make extra money. For the environment, it's a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Brief.
It needs to be very brief, please.
It is going to be very brief, because I'm tired. And I have a migraine. And I don't even remember if I stated that I have lived in that condo for 10 years previously to purchasing it, with Ryan's Amusement there, with the 10 lanes of bowling. And there was never a problem. Never.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Attorney Ament, come up, please.
Madam Chair, I do have a question for the applicant, if I may.
Yes, please.
So I just wanted to follow up on the estimated meals tax revenue and just confirm that the gross revenue is estimated between $13 and $26 million for food, because the meals tax is 0.075%.
We'll have to ask.
Or I'm sorry,
Mr. Doherty
it's
to comment.
0.75%. So it's less than a 1% tax on the meals tax. So by my calculation, I think you're looking at, in order to get to $200,000, you'd be looking at $26 million in food receipts. And I don't know if that was, maybe perhaps the tax rate was misunderstood, or if that's an accurate representation. I'm not in the restaurant business, so maybe it is. I don't know.
No, that was
Yeah.
I have bookkeepers.
Use the mic, sorry.
If you could just state your name, please, also.
Go to state tax.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Okay. Hi, my name's John Ricciardi. Hello, Select Board. Yeah, the numbers that were given to me were from our bookkeepers and what we generally pay at Sopranos Casino by the Sea right now. And I used those numbers, and that's the current what we pay there now, so I figured we'd be doing around the same sales on Main Street.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I just follow?
Yes.
So if I could ask to clarify, so the revenues at Sopranos, is that the total meals tax that you're paying to the state, or is that the Falmouth meals tax? That may be where the confusion is.
Yeah, I think that's where it is. I think it was together, so.
Okay, thank you.
Attorney Ament?
Well, I just want to remind the board what you know, that this is not a hearing about timbers. It's not a request for an entertainment license. It's not a request for a liquor license. There is no way to expand businesses on Main Street without being on the sewer. The sewer in Main Street has been there for 50 or more years. Most of the properties were developed before there even was a sewer. And business zone, you know, the restaurant, as I've said, is a permitted use. I think that if there are problems of the types that have been raised, and I can't disagree, those are enforcement matters. But I'd also like to point out, I could immediately name 10 restaurants on Main Street that are connected to the sewer and have no or hardly any parking. I mean, this is our downtown. This is where people are coming, and this is going to be a quality establishment. And I think that as the Chamber of Commerce said, we need to be able to support the renewal, constant renewal of downtown. A few months ago this year, the board approved a 125-seat restaurant next to the Peking Palace at 464 Main Street. As it turns out, that project is not going to go forward with those number of seats. The building will be almost entirely apartments with a much lower flow of into the sewer. And I mention that simply because just recently you've approved a 125-seat restaurant a little farther down on Main Street connected to the sewer, but also that plans change. There are projects, there are restaurants we have today that are not going to be restaurants in the future. And this is a property that we hope will be a restaurant for many years to come. So I hope you'll vote in favor of this.
Thank you. And, yes?
I apologize, do you have a question? Is there a required timeline that you need for us to approve this to be able to move forward with your plans?
Well, I think you have all the information that you need, but to answer your question, we're waiting for a determination on this issue before we feel we can apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And, you know, it's probably another 6 months of permitting with the, to get through the Board of Appeals.
And the reason I ask that is because I think the point about who, are you not able to hear me? Is that better? Okay. I think the point that was brought up about who's in line to have the sewering and if we're jumping in front of homes, and I don't have that information. I don't know, and I don't want to put our wastewater superintendent on the spot, but I would like to have some more information on that. If there is a plan that's supposed to have a number of houses on a sewer.
The sewer districts are set. I doubt that there are many houses that are proposed in the sewer districts that are, and there are none that aren't being built because of the issue of allocation of the sewage flow, because the flow neutral bylaw allows on a vacant lot a house to be built without coming before you. There are multifamily housing projects that are in the works, one of which we're going to discuss in a few minutes. And all of those, if they're connected to the sewer, and in the Mr. Codd zoning district, to develop under the recently passed Mr. Codd, you have to connect to the sewer. So in that sense, there are projects that will come along which take up capacity. And so you have an opinion from Amy Lowell that there is capacity for this project. And she suggests that we're just above 80% of the present capacity of the sewer treatment plant. But the town is already in the works to expand the sewer treatment plant. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think there are any housing projects that are in line so that people are waiting to be permitted to be on the sewer. So far, there's been sufficient capacity for all the projects that have come before the town. And while 80% is getting high, there's a lot of capacity in the system. There's 20% that hasn't been allocated, and not all of the projects that have been approved will be built, but we have to assume that they will be. Anyway, I think that, as the chamber suggests, we can't not allocate more flow for projects that are, you know, in the business district, and that's what we're asking.
I'm going to entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Still had one person.
Oh, we did? Okay, I'll take one more comment. We are way behind.
I'll be brief. My name is Dennis Jaya. I'm new to this. While I, as many other Falmouth residents, I think would love to see another nice restaurant in town. It seems like the issue appears being made over parking. I think parking is a very easy issue to fix. However, I think that what's being asked for approval here is the sewage, and my understanding is that there's finite capacity on the sewage system, and it's not something that's easy to upgrade. The number that we're focusing on is the 125 seats and generating revenue at this restaurant. There's another number of 40 employees. If you talk to the restaurants in Falmouth, as we've seen in the signs in their windows for the past 3 years now, it's very difficult for them to find employees. If you want to open a restaurant and hire 40 people, my question would be is where are those 40 people going to live? And if that is a problem, and if this sewage of limited capacity is taking away from housing, how do you plan to employ people to work at this restaurant if they don't have housing? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neto, very briefly.
Yes, because I'd like to clarify something that I think is a misstatement. When you talk about the sewer plant, you're talking about two different things. One is treatment of sewage, and the other is discharge. And the problem with our sewer plant is the discharge. So for someone to stand here at this podium and say that that plant can accept unlimited use, as we'll see in the next article, is wrong. And it should be stopped and corrected. It's the discharge of the effluent that we cannot handle. Ask the people in West Falmouth Harbor, where we have polluted West Falmouth Harbor with nitrogen from our own sewer system, as I'll tell you later, and we've been taken to court and lost. But let's please, when things are said that aren't true, would somebody please clarify them?
Thank you, Mr. Neto.
I'd like to ask our wastewater superintendent to actually speak to the issue on the discharge, because it's my understanding what's coming out of our tertiary treatment plant now has about the same amount of nitrogen as the ocean. But Amy, please, if you would provide us with the correct information.
Yep, that's not quite right.
Okay.
The wastewater treatment plant does an excellent job of removing nitrogen, but our target is about 3 milligrams per liter 3 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen, and what's in Buzzards Bay is about 0.37 milligrams per liter total nitrogen. So it is a different number, but our discharge is not into the bay. Our discharge is to the ground, and the treated wastewater moves with the groundwater and disperses over time. There is additional attenuation that occurs over time, but I don't want to mislead people about the concentration relative to the bays, but I do want to say that this there is an intimation that the treatment plant is not performing well and isn't meeting its goals, and that is not correct.
It's not accurate.
There have been periodic problems over the years, and we have talked about them in this room, but we have an annual load limit that of total nitrogen to the West Falmouth Harbor watershed, and that has been our discharge from the wastewater treatment plant has been substantially below that in 4 out of the past 5 years, and overall, if you average those, has certainly been below that. And our, as I said, our target is 3 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen. That is not a limit, a hard limit in our permit, but on average, the effluent total nitrogen concentration has been 3.45 milligrams per liter over the past 5 years, which there are very few plants in Massachusetts that can be said about. So the plant is performing quite well. It is not perfect. This is a complicated system, but it does perform well and does its job.
And Madam Chair?
Thank you.
I know you want to move on, but just to quickly recap the discharge, we recently approved the additional 2 beds at the treatment plant to manage our capacity for discharge, so we're not really up against a wall, are we?
So there is the town has sent a plan to the state, a targeted watershed management plan for Great Pond, and part of that plan is to expand the discharge capacity at that location, at beds 14 and 15 which is the northernmost beds that are outside of the West Falmouth Harbor watershed. The state is going to be reviewing that plan right now. So we do not have state approval yet to move forward with that plan, but that is the town's short-term plan. In the longer term, we are also looking at an outfall for larger scale discharge.
Madam Chair?
Thank you.
Could I just ask,
Yes.
while we have wastewater superintendent Amy Lowell at the microphone, to respond to the question that Mr. Neto asked. So we have a written referral from Ms. Lowell that says the system, the wastewater treatment system, does have capacity for that project. And when you wrote that, I believe you are talking about both the treatment at the plant and the capacity to discharge that effluent. Is that accurate?
Correct. That we have a total permitted discharge capacity, and the plant with this proposed development would be at 80.9% of its permitted discharge capacity on an average annual basis. So there is discharge capacity for this at the wastewater treatment plant. And at the recharge sites. I am not in charge of allocating capacity. I'm just in charge of saying what is there and managing that facility.
Thank you.
Just final comment. We've also additionally identified the Allen parcel, which could substantially handle our capacity if we choose to go that route. But right now, we're investigating the outfall option to determine whether or not it's financially viable. And then we'll decide if we go back to the Allen parcel or we go the outfall. So it's not as if we don't have anywhere to put our discharge.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion amongst the board?
I would start, if you would allow me. I would just say that I'm a little hesitant about approving such a large project without any designated parking. And a lot of good points have been made, but other boards will review that as to the parking. It's a kind of a tricky process we have because we approve the sewer connection first. And I don't know if that influences other boards' decision-making, but I would hope not, that they would still judge the project on its merits, and we're just in charge of the sewage flow. So that's my comment.
Mr. Patterson?
I would just say I've lived in urban areas, and believe me, there's a lot less parking per establishment and restaurant and everything else in these areas, and people just have to walk a little further. And it can be done rather easily. And there are shuttle services.
And Lawrence School's not that far away.
And Lawrence School, not to mention Mullen Hall.
Right.
And usually those places can be found. But, you know, it's a challenge, and we know it's going to be during the seasonal summertime when we have this huge increase in population. And those folks are used to it for the most part.
Right.
So, you know, I understand the concern, but I think it's very important that we support the business community and the business vitality and the economic future of Falmouth. And this is a very good use of that downtown area.
So I did think that the concern that was brought up about us using some of this flow that could be used for homes or potentially affordable housing developments. But I also understand that it would be difficult for us to make a decision just based on that, having no idea what a plan might be. But I think that's why it's important when we have our strategic planning sessions that we talk about where affordable housing and other developments are going to come into play as far as what our priorities are. So while I think it's a little bit of a difficult decision to consider, given all of the concerns about it, I don't think that we could hold this for the sewering, because that's the only part that's in our purview. The parking and other things are not within our purview. I don't think that it would be responsible for us to hold this for a potentially unknown project or unknown homes that want to connect to the sewer.
Any other comments from the
Madam
board?
Chair,
Yes.
I have to mirror Anjali's statement. I have great faith in our regulatory boards that will take up our concerns. I truly believe that it's our purview to either go with the approval of the sewer or not, and let on the board that they have to present. And I encourage the public that have concerns to go to those meetings as well and voice your concerns that'll be part of their process. But I think what's before us is what's before us, and we can't, there is no magic, magic ball on how it's gonna turn out. I mean, we know that we need economic vitality. We wanna create jobs. I understand about housing. But I think what's before us is, the question is, do we approve? We have a recommendation or a referral that states that it can handle the capacity, and I think that's what's before us.
A variance on the flow-neutral bylaw. That's what is being asked of us.
I would move approval of this request for a variance to the flow-neutral bylaw.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 2, our second hearing, flow-neutral bylaw, evaluation of request for a variance, New Creek LLC, 13 Davis Straits, Falmouth.
Notice is hereby given that the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 27, 2022 at 7:30 PM in the Select Board Meeting Room, Town Hall, Falmouth, MA, on the application of New Creek LLC for a wastewater flow variance under Chapter 180, Section 56 of the Code of Falmouth, the so-called flow-neutral bylaw, for mixed residential commercial overlay district development with affordable rental housing at 13 Davis Straits in said Falmouth, parcel 3915-049D-004, per order of the Select Board, publication date Friday, August 5th, 2022, Falmouth Enterprise.
Okay, Attorney Ament, you also represent this applicant, and I'm going to keep you a little closer to your 15 minutes on this.
I'll try, thank you. I represent Kimco Corporation. Kimco is a Fortune 500 company, and it owns a portion of the Falmouth Plaza under name New Creek LLC. They propose to construct an apartment building on a portion of their property. It's where Staples is and the former Friendly's restaurant. They would also remove three of the storefronts going towards Planet Fitness. I think that would include the Olympia Sports. So those would be removed. And on that portion of their property, they propose to build for Falmouth, very large apartment building. Now, this property is in the mixed residential commercial overlay district. What I have in front of you is a plan that actually shows the sewer system, which may be worth talking about later. But the property that Kimco owns is basically what I've described here. This is the Friendly's building. This is Staples. They do not own Starbucks, which is in the middle of that stretch along Davis Straits. And what they propose to do is build a building that might look something like this on the site plan. Let me see if I can move that for you. The Mr. Cod zoning requires that building be 20 feet from the street, and it has certain setback requirements, parking requirements, and so on. Just let me say that this proposal will meet all of the Mr. Cod requirements. We believe that's the goal. And we have a current rendering of the building. No, sorry, you've seen that before, and thank you for your time with it. But this one. This design has come a long ways after meetings with the Cape Cod Commission, informal meetings with town officials, again, informal meetings, because we haven't done any permitting. And the designs with the gabled roofs and different setbacks are supposed to meet those requirements of the Mr. Cod zoning district. One of the things that I like about this plan, with its 156 apartments, 250 total rooms on 9.4 acres, with 25% or 39 of apartments being affordable, but all 156 apartments, these are apartments, not for sale units, would be on the town's subsidized list of affordable housing. That's like with a 40B project, that this is under our zoning bylaw, not 40B. But all of the apartments count towards the subsidized housing list, which has significant benefits to the town in dealing with 40B's safe harbor rules. We think this is a great site for affordable housing, for apartment housing, because one, it's being developed on land that's totally paved or has structures almost totally, so the lot coverage will be reduced by this project. There'll be more open space or lawn. It's on transportation, public transportation routes. The initial traffic studies that have been done for the project indicate that the traffic from these apartments would be approximately half the traffic that results from a restaurant of the size of Friendly's and the retail like Staples and Olympia Sports. So it doesn't create more traffic, it creates less. It doesn't involve removal of green space, it creates more, and it's connected to the sewer so that it doesn't have environmental impacts associated directly with the project. Well, the town, when it adopted the flow neutral bylaw, provided that for multifamily housing in business districts, which requires a special permit, if it's not Mr. Cod, that only requires site plan review from the planning board. The flow neutral bylaw wouldn't apply to a 55 apartment building on this site with 165 bedrooms, because the bylaw specifically provides that that's by right without needing a variance from the select board. We're utilizing the Mr. Cod bylaw, which specifically allows up to 20 units per acre by right, 20 units per acre with a site plan review by the planning board. We're proposing a little less than 17 units per acre. One of the requirements for any of these projects in the Mr. Cod district is that we be on the town sewer. So we have to be on the town sewer to create the affordable housing, which is what we're trying to do. If we figure the by right flow, that is the 55 apartments with 3 bedrooms per each, and the flows that will be removed from the system with a Friendly's restaurant not being available for rent, with Staples being removed and so on, we calculate that we're only asking for 1,639 additional gallons per day of flow out of the system. The wastewater and superintendent, Lowell, who's here, has reported that there is capacity in the system for this project. That is in the treatment plant in West Falmouth. But she has identified a problem which we only became aware of the end of last week. I think on Wednesday, Amy called me, and we talked subsequently, and then had a conference which Peter Johnson-Staub referred to earlier, a conference today. And the problem is that the sewerage from this site and significant areas around it, Amy can describe it better, and maybe it'd be useful to bring back that sewer plan. So I'm pointing here to the head of Falmouth Inner Harbor, and that's where there is a lift station. So the sewage from Falmouth Plaza and other areas nearby, again, Amy can describe it better, but it flows by gravity to that lift station. and then from there is pumped into the system to get on its way to West Falmouth. That's a layman's description of what happens. And apparently that lift station may not have the capacity, sufficient pumping capacity to handle the flow from this project. Well, if that's the case, it's a bigger problem than just our project, because this is a significant area that was identified by the town, looking at the form-based zoning and the Mr. Cod bylaw for further development, and it's an ideal location for the kind of housing that we're proposing, and we've gotten positive feedback about it from the Cape Cod Commission and other town officials. But we obviously can't overburden any components of the system, so it's a problem we need to deal with. Usually, permitting begins with the Cape Cod Commission. Local boards are supposed to refer matters to the commission. But the ability to hook up to the sewer is a threshold determination. There's no project without it. And so, as in previous cases, the Cape Cod Commission has allowed us to come to the board of the select board before going to the Cape Cod Commission to see if there is the capacity in the system and if we'll be allowed to hook up the project to it. Then we would go to the Cape Cod Commission with that knowledge, and then we'd come back 6, 8, 12 months later, after dealing with the Cape Cod Commission, to the planning board for site plan review. So we estimate 18 months of permitting for this project. Well, we're here as this first stop because, again, it's a threshold question. Can we be on the sewer or not? And we have a problem. Ms. Lowell's recommendation is that this request be put off for 6 months, while she, working with engineers hired by the town and is contracted, study solutions to this problem. And we understand that obviously a lot of study is necessary to determine what the alternatives are. And Amy can list them, but I don't know. I do note that as this plan shows, we have a force main that runs down Davis Straits right in front of the plaza. Maybe it's possible to hook into that for this development, and then the flows into the lift station at the head of the harbor will actually be reduced because we'll be taking flow away from that with the uses that we're getting away from. Is that a solution? I don't know if that's a solution, and that's the type of thing that needs to be studied. Now, Kimco, being a big company, would like to help in figuring out what to do. After all, they own this property. They're here for the long run, and they'd like to do this project. So if they can be helpful, they'd like to be. And I believe that we'll have some discussions with Ms. Lowell and the town about that possibility. What concerns us is the proposal for a 6-month delay in at least knowing if there's capacity in the overall system. We know there's a problem at that lift station and we have to solve it. But Kimco's had experience, in fact, recently in another town having to deal with a insufficient lift station, and they think they can be helpful. They're also willing to say internally that they can deal with that problem. They think the town can deal with that problem and that it's not a game stopper. What they need to know is if the town will allocate the sewage flow overall from the West Falmouth system to allow this project to go forward. Because they have a huge investment to make in detailed plans to get to the Cape Cod Commission and go through this year of permitting, and they're willing to do that without knowing what the solution will be for the lift station, but confident that there is a solution. So we're hopeful that what the select board would do is grant a conditional approval to connect to the sewer, conditioned on the lift station problem or other solution. It may be there's another solution be satisfactory. And we had a brief discussion in the conference with Mr. Johnson-Staub and Ms. Lowell today about that, and also the Assistant Town Council was on that call. And our hope is that we might be able to come up with language that the town is satisfied and feels comfortable with, giving us basically a conditional approval that would be enough so that we go forward with the next steps to deal with this project. Since this is a developed property, I'm almost done, Madam Chairman, and thank you. We have a vacant restaurant building. We have other stores with leases that are coming up. Decisions need to be made by Kimco as to what to do with these spaces. And there's the leasing division, and there's the development division, and the leasing people would like to lease these buildings, and the development people say, no, we've got a project, it's a good project, we want to go forward with it. The delay involved in not knowing if we can even hook up to the sewer for a project which meets Mr. Cod in terms of density, location, everything. It's a problem, and we may not be able to afford that delay, but they will do it with the condition. So my suggestion and request to the select board tonight is that you not continue for 6 months, but that you continue for about a month to give us time to have some further discussion with the town to try to come up with a decision that the town is comfortable with and that allows Kimco to continue to move forward in the direction of creating this housing project. Thanks.
Public,
Oh. Yeah.
let's start here with Mr. Zelinski.
I have a
and then Mr.
question for
Patterson.
Ms. Lowell, though, would probably help. You're probably gonna have to get up for this. Sorry, not to put you on the spot. But is there any opportunity with how much land there is there to put, and this is conceptual, I'm just spitballing here, for some kind of subsurface containment unit that can monitor the amount of outflow, so we could have on-property storage to be able to slow down the outflow to not overrun your lift station, and maybe a relief. Is there any opportunity to put a conventional system to help take up the slack off of a containment unit to help not overburden your lift station? Is that even possible?
That would be pretty unconventional, what you're describing.
I'm an unconventional guy.
There are options which we would evaluate as part of the evaluation I've proposed. For example, increasing the size of the wet well, the tank at our current lift station, putting a smaller lift station on the...
I'm sorry, but I'm talking about on their property.
Right, so it is possible to put, for example, a lift station on their property, which could then basically bypass the Inner Harbor lift station where we have the limitation. And obviously there's a cost to that, and we need to look at the technical constraints, but there are a variety of options. I think rather than storage, we would look at additional lift station options.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, then Amy, don't go away, please. We have another lift station on Spring Bars Road,
Yes.
and it's not that far. And it may not be a gravity flow from this project down to it, but it seems like a relatively modest lift station could get it to that lift station if that would be a feasible option.
Right, so the wastewater flow is complicated in this area. So the Spring Bars lift station pumps to the gravity system and does not go into the Inner Harbor lift station, as I guess you're implying. So that would be another direction that wastewater flow could go. It might be more efficient to not move it to the lift station and have it pumped directly into the force main. So we would look at a variety of options for how to do that.
Ms. Lowell, did you request 6 months to look at this?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I was going to just say that maybe we put it off for a month and see if they're able to make any progress, rather than, I know if Ms. Lowell had to deal with it all on her own and fix her own lift station to accommodate their flow, I can understand that 6-month time frame makes sense. But if the applicant wants to offer some assistance and possibly contribute to the solution and thinks that they can have some idea in 30 days, I would be happy to move that.
Can I clarify that we don't believe that we can fix this problem in 6 months?
Right.
We believe we can come up with a solution in 6 months. So a recommended concept for how this would be done, then it would need to be designed and constructed. So I wasn't sure that was clear in what you were saying.
No, I understood that.
And I think if the wastewater superintendent is requesting 6 months, I think from my perspective, I would be willing to vote that for 6 months. But we also are going to need to get some public comment. But go ahead, Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, I'm not, it seems like there's a happy medium here. You're not saying this can't be done. And I think that's the question that the Cape Cod Commission is asking us. This can be solved, is my point. You may not have the solution in detailed design, but you should be able to come up within a month, I think, to say, we can handle this. We're going to come up with a design. We're going to get the appropriate engineering consultants to come in and tell us what will work. And that's, I think the question is being asked. Can't we give them an assurances that they could build this project, and by the time it gets completed, that we will have upgraded our sewage distribution or sewage collection system to be able to accommodate?
I think the month was requested for a different, was requested really to draft language, was not for us determining the solution to the wastewater issue. It's not an infinitely complicated thing. It is a solvable problem, but I don't personally feel that we can come up with a good solution, a well thought out solution in just a month.
Madam Chair.
So the 1 month is to create language for a contingent?
Perhaps
Is that
Peter
correct?
could explain that.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. The 30-day, if the idea behind a 30-day, to continue the hearing for 30 days, that is being offered if the board wants to entertain the notion of a conditional approval of the variance. And I just, if I could, while I have the floor, I just want to make sure that that the board is thinking through all of the steps. So as Ms. Lowell has said, this is clearly a problem that can be solved, and we would, Ms. Lowell is suggesting that it's going to take us up to 6 months to identify what the engineering solution is and put a cost to it. And that's the issue that I don't think, if we're asked a purely theoretical question, can we fix this lift station to accommodate this flow? The answer is clearly yes. But I think the board needs to know at what cost and who's paying for it and how long is it going to take. So that's why it's not a simple exercise of, okay, here's an engineering solution. We need to actually get cost estimates so that we can dialogue with the owner and say, okay, here's the preferred design, here's the cost estimate, here's the timeline to go to town meeting to get the funding to construct this, and how does that timeline dovetail with the construction timeline. And I will say that we started that conversation this morning, and we're talking about a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, that it would take to go through this process. That actually might work for the developer, but it's certainly not. We're not going to rush into knowing within 30, 60 days, exactly what the solution is and how we're going to solve it.
And can you do it in 30 days to come up with the language for contingency? But before we move into that, I'd like to take any public comment. Ms. Harris?
Hi, I'm Charlotte Harris. I'm here to speak for the planning board, not about the quality of the project, certainly not. That will come before us in a different way, but to talk about the process, and the process that you are now beginning. And as Mr. Brown pointed out, it's sort of a backwards process, that this threshold issue has to be solved before so many other questions can be answered. So I would like to urge you to please let it go forward as best you can in a conditional way, so that it can begin, because much of this work will happen simultaneously anyway. And as several people have now said, it's going to be a 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 year process for people to get ready to even start breaking ground, I believe, so that there's time to solve these things. It's not to ask you to approve a process that's going to shortcut any of the safeguards for the town sewering system or for the building things, but just to say you are willing to work with the developer, who is a very well-qualified owner there, to get this process off the ground so that they will go forward with it. In order to talk you into that in a way, I'm not sure you're familiar with the context of Kimco and that piece of land. Probably Peter Johnson Staub is, maybe some others are. I know that Mr. Ahmed probably is. Picture Falmouth Plaza, and there are no more than 5 owners there. There may be only 4. Kimco, I believe, is the largest owner. They are the most ready to go forward because they're the biggest corporation that's an owner, and because they own malls in many, many places across America. Their malls are failing, they're replacing them with housing. They know how to do this. They have other places to put their money. They don't have to wait for you to do this. They can say, well, Falmouth, they're going slowly. We're going to do this somewhere else instead. One thing about approving it now, in a way, conditionally, is to say to Kimco, we want to work with you. You've indicated you want to work with the town. They've indicated in other ways, too. The design you saw tonight isn't the first one they handed in, it's the second, and I'm sure there are going to be others. But they want to work with us. They want this to happen here. And what I think Falmouth needs to say to Kimco, we want you to be there. We're going to cooperate with you. We're not going to have a 6-month halt right this minute at the beginning. We're going to say go forward. Things can happen simultaneously, and maybe it's a conditional approval, maybe it's a 1-month, month-to-month process to see what do you come up with in a month, but to create a sense of urgency and priority in the town that matches Kimco's. The other owners who are there, I don't know what their capacity is to begin a big development, but I'm reasonably certain they're watching what we're doing now and seeing whether or not Falmouth is going to pick up its socks and move quickly on Mr. Codd. You guys are the choir. You all wanted affordable housing. This is town meeting's answer, this is your answer, it's the planning board's answer, but we need to put some wind in its sails to show we want to work with this, not just to create a bylaw and see how it goes, but to work with the developers. The whole thing about Mr. Codd is the town won't be putting money into the development of that area of Davis Straits. The owners and developers will be putting their money in. And how respectful are we going to be of them as they make that choice? So I came tonight, I was going to come anyway just to say this would be a really great thing for the town, and then read the thing about the 6 months and thought, oh, please don't do that. Please find a way to move it forward 1 month at a time if that's what you need to do, but let the people who are working on it now know that the town wants to work with them with a sense of urgency.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Weiss. I moved here about 1.5 years ago, and I'm a young engineer in town. And I just wanted to speak on behalf of the young people in this town about the urgency of the housing crisis. I've moved 5 times since I got here due to the seasonality of the local housing situation and what's whole in the broader Falmouth community. And I too am extremely excited about any opportunity in this town for affordable housing. Not only because it might be a place that I would move someday, but because it would remove pressures from the rest of the housing stock that we're all sort of clamoring for. I also found the last speaker very compelling and wonder what about a conditional sort of agreement would block parallel processing, in the sense that it sounds very reasonable that if there's a conditional approval made and later we realize that it's not possible due to the constraints of the engineering problem, then by all means it shouldn't happen. But if a conditional approval is made, it sounds like those parallel processes can move forward and hopefully aim to solve the very urgent housing problem. Ooh, like, haven't talked at this ever. And it's so important to me, which is why like my voice is shaking. And I hope that this can move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Harlow-Hawks?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just had a question for Ms. Lowell. We keep talking about 80% capacity. I want to know what the gallonage is, because this, Mr. Ament made a statement that this was X amount of gallons per day. And when I read the packet, it appeared that it was 19,780 gallons per day, which will be a DE permit, which is 7 million gallons a year, roughly. So I just, we keep talking 80% at the wastewater, and honestly, I don't know what, is it 2,000 gallons left? Is it 200,000 gallons left? And how will this particular project, again, this isn't just 5,000 gallons, this is almost 20,000 gallons a day. How that brings that 80%, is it now going to be 85%, or, so maybe Ms. Lowell?
Yes.
I know she has the answer, she always does. And I also think that the time that she's asking, these boards work tirelessly, and these town employees do. And to say 30 days for these people to pull this all together, I just find it almost disingenuous, again, that we're putting a burden on them because the developer's in a hurry. I think they need the time to do it right.
So what I'm talking about when I talk about 80%, or in this case, so the last project that we talked about that the board approved brought the projected annual average flow to 80.9% of 710,000 gallons per day, which is 710,000 gallons per day is the average annual discharge permitted for the wastewater treatment facility. So that means the remaining flow is about 135,000 gallons per day. The total, so 710,000 gallons per day is our total average annual discharge capacity. The total flow with this development, on average, will be 570, we'll call it 575,000 gallons a day, which leaves about 135,000 gallons a day.
Thank you.
Is this after the Sagamore, the Scranton Avenue project?
The Scranton, the project that is going on, that's already been approved, yes.
Mr. Netto?
Joe Netto, Precinct 9, and I come here as a town meeting member and as a citizen, lifelong citizen of the town of Falmouth, as Mr. Moriarty said. I can't believe, before I even start anything, the pressure that you just put on your wastewater superintendent to come up with an answer in 30 days. The ramifications, not an answer, I know what you'll, but to put that type of pressure on a problem of this magnitude, as I will allude to, I'm sure you got my email that I wrote to you this afternoon, and some of that has been answered. And my first comment that I'd like to make, I'd like to take words out of Mr. Ament's presentation when he said plans change. When the Falmouth Heights Little Pond Sewer Project was developed, I own property in Falmouth Heights. I went to every select board meeting that Mr. Jack at that time had. Took copious notes, paid attention. Saw how the sewer was planned, how the effect on the treatment plant, the ESUs, the equivalent sewer unit. Then, and why things change, is town meeting of November 2021 as the planning board chairman. When we pass legislation that puts 20 units per acre for development, in other words, 20 houses, and I'm going to ask you for a moratorium on flow neutral bylaws until you do a study of what that planning board article and how it's going to affect our sewer plant and discharge. I don't know how to use this pointer, but if you take Davis Straits from the Stop and Shop light to the Heights corner, all this area in here comes under that bylaw. How many acres are you going to multiply times 20? Because that's what you're going to get in front of you if you vote this project here tonight without a lot more careful study. I'm not saying stop the project. This is all new to us. This bylaw isn't 1 year old. This is the first large proposal. There are many parts of it that are excellent. We're getting rid of asphalt, creating green space. We're creating housing. I'm not against that. I'm an environmentalist. And once you lose the environment, and God knows we see that every night we watch the nightly news. We live on Cape Cod that has a sole source aquifer. We ever lose our drinking water? When someone flushes their toilet in P-Town, it affects water quality here in Falmouth. That's what we've always been told. Make a study of the possible build-out of what that bylaw change and how it's going to affect the sewer plant that Ms. Laurel has to manage. As a town meeting member, I voted millions of dollars to fix this plant, which obviously has some major flaws. And I'd like to correct some comments that were made earlier. The Buzzards Bay Coalition has taken the town to court and proved that the sewer treatment plant in the past did not operate correctly for 40%. That's why your West Falmouth Harbor is polluted with nitrogen. It takes 8 years for that water to leave the sewer plant and hydraulically enters Buzzards Bay through West Falmouth Harbor. So we're not going to feel the effects of this for 8 years. If you pass this variant, every landowner on 28 on Davis Strait is going to come here with mega projects. We'll have more housing because that's where the money is. And why the hurry? Why do we have to hurry for the developer? Developers come and go, and we're left sometimes with the good projects, and sometimes we're left with the bad. I could name you projects that the town been stuck with. And why should the Falmouth taxpayer have to foot this bill? Maybe Kimco will be generous and say, we'll build that lift station. Granted. And if we're having problems with this first project, what in the world's going to happen when these other people come in? You folks have got to protect Falmouth's future. That's why we elected you. If you're going to deal with this one isolated case at a time, that's the wrong approach. I ask you to consider that moratorium till you get all the facts and figures of what that planning board article has affected the sewer plant. I'd like to remind you, and two of you I know weren't even here in the 70s, the sewer got defeated in the 70s. Guess why? Outfall pipe. That's where they were going to put it. And it got defeated. And what are we talking about today, Mr. Brown?
Outfall pipe.
Outfall pipe.
Things
change.
The different item.
Things change. So I'm asking you, really, to study this problem more than just this project. Because this is the first major one. But what are you going to tell the next, a year from now, Ms. Lowell is going to be here saying, we have no more capacity. Because these people are going to come forward. Mr. Ahmed mentioned that, I didn't even know this, I thought the plaza was basically owned by one corporation. There are 5 other owners up there? Is that correct? Other than your client?
Mr. Neto, just speak to the board,
Well,
please.
Do we know how many other people own property in the Falmouth Plaza?
I thought they said there were 4.
Does it really matter?
Yes, it matters because, Mr. Brown, they're going to come forward with other housing units too, aren't they?
I hope so. Yeah.
And then how are we going to treat all this? You
Okay,
hope so,
let's-
but where are we going to treat all of this sewerage
We just
from Davis Strait?
We just funded design of another sequencing batch reactor, expand capacity at the plant. We have plenty of treatment capacity. We're identifying discharge parcels. We're on track to have good discharge capacity.
Let's let Mr. Neto finish his comments, then we're going to close the hearing, and the board can have a discussion.
Well, I think we have to see facts and figures for this whole section of town that this bylaw has affected. That's proper planning. To act individually on this first large applicant, which has many beneficial aspects. I'm not speaking against those. I'm speaking against the environmental impact that these projects cumulatively, not just as this one, but cumulatively will have on this town. I remember when that was a field. It was a field, nothing was there. So anyhow, and some of the figures, Ms. Lowell's figures and Mr. Ahmed's figures about the discharge, Ms. Lowell's figures are 7,300,000 gallons. And Mr. Ahmed said something about 106 a year. That would be the impact of that one project in 1 year. When you multiply those gallons by 365, you get 7,300,000 additional gallons of wastewater in this one project, and that comes from your wastewater superintendent's figures.
Okay, I'm going to
Thank you very much.
ask you to wrap it up. Mr. Ament, you can make some closing comments, and then I'd like to close the hearing.
Thanks very much. Perhaps the important thing to say is clarify what I've suggested you do. All I'm suggesting is that you give us 30 days to see if we can come up with language working with Ms. Lowell and Town Council so that there can be an approval of the overall capacity for this project, subject to solving the particular problems of this lift station. Subject to solving those in the months ahead. We're not asking to do anything. We're not going to solve those problems in the next 30 days. We want to know if we could solve those problems, can we hook up to the town sewer? If we can solve those problems, can we hook up to the town sewer? That's what we need to know. And then we'll have to solve those problems to the satisfaction of the town. Mr. Neto, I've never heard anybody argue that we're going to have too much affordable housing. When we get to that problem, that'll be a good thing. It was Mr. Neto who moved at town meeting last November that restricted the Mr. Codd district to being on the sewer. So this is where the affordable housing is proposed to be. Falmouth only has 7% of its housing stock that's rental. Typically, it'd be more like 30. We've got a long ways to go. This is a good start. Mr. Neto suggesting we have a moratorium after town meeting passed the article before we even have a start.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to move that we continue this hearing for, till the last meeting in September. Don't know what
September 26th.
September 26th, then.
I would second that.
I'm not sure I can vote for 30 days. I could vote for giving a little bit more time to come up with the language. So that's not something, if I were to vote positively, I would have to amend the motion. But we have a motion and a second. All those in
Do you wanna
favor?
have- oh, you already have it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, any opportunity for more discussion before we vote?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I
Just
thought we
saying,
had
you
a
have to
motion and a
retract the
second.
Oh,
motion.
we do, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying that,
You want to hold the motion, Mr. Brown?
I didn't know we couldn't have discussion after the second.
Now, you can have
We have a
a,
motion and a second, but you want to continue the
And there's time
discussion.
for- yeah.
That's fine.
that's the normal procedure.
That's
That's
fine.
Just
Go
before
ahead.
we vote, I just wanted to point out that if they're not in agreement on 30 days, Mr. Johnson Staub can recommend further continuance
Yes, exactly.
before he brings it to the agenda.
Okay, but how do you want to, so how do you want to vote it? You want to vote the 30 days and then Mr. Johnson Staub can come back to us and say,
He could recommend a continuance for further
Okay.
consideration, if that's what's
any other
needed.
discussion?
If there's just, I need to be comfortable that our wastewater superintendent is comfortable with what's being proposed.
With the
Okay.
30 days to create the language.
I need to know from her
to-
before I vote that she's comfortable with that.
To create the
The way that it's
contingent
been
language.
described.
That makes sense.
I'm comfortable with
Creating
30
language?
days to create language about the Board of Selectmen's vote. So I think this will not just be me, this will be town council and Peter Johnson Staub reviewing language on, for the select board to consider about approval of the project, subject to agreement on the lift station plans.
Madam Chair, thank
So
you.
I'm comfortable with
Thank-
that.
Thank you very much. Then I would be in favor of that as long as she's comfortable with it.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Any more discussion? Okay. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, we are so far behind.
So, Madam Chair,
Now
just to
9
clarify,
o'clock?
that hearing is continued to September 26th.
Yes.
That's correct.
Pending your
Well, we do
Satisfaction
have to
with the
continue
process.
to a date certain. We
Right.
can continue again.
If we
Right.
get to the 27th, we can continue.
I can read the next notice.
Yes, please.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that 77 Water Street Incorporated and doing business as Captain Kidd Restaurant has applied for a change of officers, directors, and change of stock interest of its all alcohol common victular license located at 77 Water Street, Woods Hole, MA. An application for a change of manager has also been submitted. The hearing will be held in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall on Monday, August 22nd, 2022 at 7:30 PM on the above application. Part of the Select Board publication date Friday, August 12th, 2022, to Falmouth Enterprise.
Is there anyone here to speak to the license? Yep. Yes.
My name is William Murray, and I'm the owner at the Captain Kidd Restaurant. And I am the one applying for all these things you mentioned.
Questions from the board?
Is this a family passing down the torch?
Sort of. I've been in business with the other fellas that were my partners for years, and I've absorbed their stock this past year. So I'm 100% owner now. And they're still involved with the real estate portion of the business. So we've worked it all out together, and everything's copacetic.
Excuse me for jumping in there.
Any other questions?
Well, since this is alcohol-related license, I assume everybody's tip certified?
I have been for about 40 years.
Okay. And you understand your responsibilities?
And the other people are also, yes, absolutely. You have to, anybody that serves alcohol has to be tips certified.
I just wanted to officially ask that question.
Absolutely, yeah.
Every time. It's good for us to know,
Yes, absolutely.
to ask. Any other questions?
Is this the new manager?
Yes. I'm
Oh, this is my daughter Katie. She's going to become the general manager and manager of record.
Okay, and as Doug Jones would always say, you understand that you are solely responsible for the activities on the presence with the serving of alcohol and the results thereof?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Comments, questions?
Nope, that's the important part.
Any
Questions
public
from-
comment?
I move we close the hearing.
Second. I would move approval of this license.
Do we vote to close the hearing?
It's not a hearing,
Oh, okay.
correct?
It is a hearing.
It is
It's
a
a
hearing.
hearing,
Oh,
yeah, it is.
okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, so
Yeah.
you close the hearing.
to vote.
Second.
We need to vote.
Vote to
All
close.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I would move approval of this application.
Second, Mr. Patterson's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Good luck,
Thank you and
thanks.
good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have another license. Approve application for a change of manager of all alcoholic club license, Woods Hole Golf Club, located at 130 Crystal Ave, Woods Hole.
So, Madam Chair, just to clarify, the hearing was for a change of directors, and then there is a separate vote for change of managers. I think you've accomplished the purpose of that, having the manager here and
Oh,
meeting
I'm
them
sorry.
and
Yes.
speaking to them, so, but I would ask for
You
a
are
vote
correct.
for the change of manager under the business agenda.
So moved
Thank
as
you.
described?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're all set. Thank you. Okay, so we took care of both of those for Captain Kidd, correct?
Yes.
Now we can move on to approve application for change of manager, all alcohol club license, Woods Hole Golf Club, 130 Crissett Ave.
Hi, my name is Alessandra Hotman from Woods Hole Golf Club. I am PIP certified.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions from the board?
No?
I move approval.
We make questions
Any
from the
public
public.
comment? Any questions, comments from the public?
I move we close the hearing.
This
Th-
one's not
this is
here.
not-
Oh, this is accept, all right. Well, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Okay, report from Human Services. And I'm going to ask you to keep to your 15-minute limit, please.
Yes. I'm, I'm Karen Delaney. I am the Executive Director of the Falmouth Service Center and the Co-Chair of the Human Services Committee. I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight, so I do promise I will be brief. It is an honor to advocate for and support the work of the Human Services Department. I can't even tell you, I think you all know the incredible work that that department does for the town, the stupendous collaborations they do. And it is truly an honor to be on that committee. We have, one of our goals is to advocate for and support the role of the Human Services Department and to identify and prioritize the unmet needs. One of the programs that we looked at this year for the General Support Services Program was the Falmouth VIPS program. They won a $9,500 grant, not one, but we appointed them a $9,500 general support grant for their Pathways program. And the Pathways program is a program to serve grades 7 to 12, identified at high risk of dropping out. It's a very innovative program. They are looking at the opportunity gap in Falmouth, and we are very excited to be able to fund that project for the first time this year. Additionally, contracts were extended with Housing Assistance Corp., the AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod, and the Cape Cod Maternal Depression Task Force. And those are programs that are looking at our homeless prevention, the substance use, and the mental health areas of emergent need. In addition, we have been working all year on a strategic plan as a committee and looking at the various collaborations, inviting community partners, trying to continually identify emergent need in Falmouth. And every meeting, Nancy's attended some of the meetings, invite a community partner to speak. The last meeting was the Cape Cod the Coalition for Children, and looking at the issue of childcare in Falmouth and the extreme ripple effect that has throughout the town. And one key thing that I want to just say is we recognize the incredible work of the Human Services Department, but there continues in Falmouth to be a large need for mental health and behavioral health services, especially for children. And we encourage the town to continue to look for options for attracting more services and programs to this area. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I have a couple of comments. Firstly, I can't agree with you more about the need in Falmouth and the broader need on Cape Cod for mental health and behavioral health services for kids. Working for the district for many, many years, that was a huge hurdle for us to try and find those services, and certainly to try and find any sort of beds, and I believe that problem has only gotten worse. The other piece I just want to mention is thinking about really supporting Falmouth Human Services with homeless prevention. It's an issue that isn't always sort of in your face, but just recently, 2 board members really had it up in our faces where we were called on to deal with something, and I immediately called other people to connect, to figure out how to do it, and then participated in a call the following day in terms of the struggle for whether it's helping people find places or potential sections for people who are homeless and also mentally ill. It continues to be a struggle in this town, and I'm not sure that everybody sees it because it's one of those things that you don't see every day. But when you do see it, it is quite
Shocking.
Remarkable and shocking at the problem here in little old Falmouth. So thank you very much, Karen, for your work and supporting our Falmouth Human Service Department.
Thank you for highlighting that. I will say the department does an incredible job collaborating. They have an essential services meeting twice a month. We at the Service Center are part of it. But the collaboration that we have seen in the last 2 years throughout the pandemic has just been phenomenal. And the work they do in the department, I can't say enough of. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Are we funding the initiatives appropriately?
Adequately?
It is town meeting appropriate. We have 4 grants that are $20,000, and this is the general support category. And they rotate every 3 years through, so that we continually are looking at that. And that's why we're inviting community partners to our advisory committee meetings, so that we can continue to look at the unmet and emerging.
But do you feel like the budget is sustainable and you're able to keep up with we're allocating?
Certainly, if the town were to appropriate, the needs are great, and we've seen them become exacerbated. So certainly, if in the next meeting they could expand the budget, that would welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Have you proposed that to the town manager or to the finance director to cover additional needs?
For the advisory committee, we work through Susie Hopman, the director. We would certainly bring that up at our next meeting.
And as a department head, she would be recommending.
I understood. I just wanted to make sure that since you're talking about these unmet needs, that at least the initiative is being made to try to meet them. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? Anything else, Karen? Yeah.
Thank you.
We
Thanks so
really
much.
appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you very much for your support.
And the work of the Service Center as well.
Yeah, it's
Phenomenal
huge.
organization.
Thank you.
I'm sure she did.
Okay. Secondly, we have a report from the Commission on Substance Use. And I will also try to hold you to your 15 minutes, please, just we're so far behind tonight.
You are going to get much less than 15.
Oh, come on, you have a lot to say.
Oh, okay, yeah. So really, this is a very short present. You know, we've all been impacted still by COVID. Our meetings have been held mostly, well, they were being held by Zoom. Recently, we started meeting in person. And, you know, there's...
Did you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would you do that, please? I know you from the commission, so
I
it
feel
went
like
right over my
everyone should
head.
already know me. Beverly Costa Ciavola, and I am the chair of the Falmouth Commission on Substance Use. And so, you know, with that, being that it's a Zoom meeting, you know, people don't usually come to attend unless they're commissioners. So we're down 2 commissioners right now, and have been for a while. We do have one person who put in an application, I believe, and we have another one who has promised to do so after the end of the summer. So we're hopeful that we're going to be up to our 5 by September, October, as long as you all approve the 2 people that are applying. And so, with just 3 of us, and one of us was out on medical leave, not very much can get accomplished, right? I mean, we are so grateful to Susie Hotman because she just really goes above and beyond to make sure that our commission is able to move forward with the things that we can do. Her and her office, Sue Bondis, are just really wonderful. So we have had some engagement with the community. My organization, Cape Cod Neighborhood Support Coalition, Samantha Bauer, who is one of our commissioners, her organization is Inspiration is Everywhere. Of course, Falmouth Human Services. We're very connected with AIDS Support Group Cape Cod. Wellstrong, they both attend our meetings. BAMSI, which don't ask me what that stands for now. The Barnstable County Regional Substance Use Council, they attend our meetings, and we attend theirs. So we're very connected with the county and what's going on in the other towns that have task forces and councils. No one else has a commission like we do, which is really, it's a really good thing for us here in Falmouth, right? Together We Can, Duffy Health Clinic, the Massachusetts Healing Communities Study, which recently ended, but we're very connected with them. We work very closely with the police department and the chief, particularly on the van, the trailer, hidden in plain sight trailer. Now again, COVID, we were not able to take that out and have people touring it the way we would like to, but we are hopeful that moving forward, we will be able to take that to more events where parents will be able to go through. And of course, Gosnold. And with many of those partnerships, we've been able to do a couple of micro grants. So we receive, I think it's $5,000 a year from the town, right? And so we gave out grants to Wellstrong for their Run Well, Run Strong Fun Run. AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod, we gave them money for fentanyl test kits, which has been a very successful endeavor for them. We gave money to the Falmouth High School after prom party. Recovery Build. The AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod did a Narcan training at the rec center, and we supported that. And we also supported the Faith Communities Forum on opiate abuse. So, I think considering these past couple of years and the way that COVID has sort of put us all in the back seat instead of the front seat, we're still doing what we need to do. Can we do more? Absolutely. But we can't do it without more commissioners, 2 more. And we also can't do it without the cooperation of the town. No, I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about, the community. I talk to people all the time with my job, and they go, Falmouth has a commission on substance use. So one of our things that we've talked with Susie about is really about how do we market ourselves so that people know we've been around for over 20 years in this town. And then they want to know, well, what kind of product have you come up with? Well, that's not what a commission does. So they don't understand that when they do hear from me that I'm the chair of the commission, they go, well, what are you doing about, sober homes? Well, what is it that you think a commission that has 3 people could do about sober homes? Are we looking into it? Yes. Do we talk with those sober homes? Absolutely. Have we, tried to do partnerships? Yes. But the town needs to better understand who we are, what our capacity for doing is, and that we can't do it if they don't want to play a role in it. So, Sam, do you have? Okay. That's it. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to
Questions, comments from
answer.
the board?
I'm just curious about the fentanyl test kits. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and they were able to, they got them from Department of Public Health, and they also got a little grant from them. So they went through them pretty quickly, and so they are, have gotten other grants to continue doing that. But what we're hearing right now is there is no heroin on Cape Cod. It is all fentanyl. And now we have a new form of fentanyl that's out there. That's like, I think the woman told me 10 times stronger than the fentanyl that we're seeing now. So to have those test strips and be able to tell, you know, people can, there's no judgment, right? They can just come in and, they can come in and get a couple of test strips and take them home.
So then, if there's no heroin and it's all fentanyl, they're testing it, but then they're left with, what's the alternative? Then they just
Well-
don't do it, or they?
Well, there's other
Gotta be
things
more
that could
careful.
be in it too, but yes, so it might be that they're bringing cocaine in. And they, you know, that they have cocaine, and they think they have cocaine, but they don't really have cocaine. What they have is fentanyl. And they won't know that unless they do a test strip. It might be that they got an opiate from somewhere, a pill. Just because there's no heroin doesn't mean there aren't any opiates out there in pill form, correct? So they could get a pill from somewhere, and they need to test that. There's a new, and I wish she was here tonight, Doris Kramer is one of the people that's going to be applying. She works for, can't think of the name of it. Anyway, she's telling us about a new one that is shaped like candy. And, you know, so they're targeting younger and younger kids. And if we're not on top of what's in all of these things, then how are we going to treat them? Because some of these drugs don't respond to Narcan. So what do we start doing then when we get drugs that don't respond to Narcan? And if you ask the fire department, the rescue, they'll tell you they're not using Narcan just once or even twice on one person. They're using it 3 and 4 times because the strength of the drug has come up so much that it's not sufficient just to give one nasal spray. They have to do it multiple times.
So I just have a couple of comments. I want to thank you for your continued support of the Falmouth High School after prom party. I thought that the Narcan training was incredibly important. And one of the meetings, you had someone come from Wellstrong, and that was very helpful to understand.
Yeah, the
what
director over there,
Wellstrong
Danielle, the
is
manager.
and what they do. And I didn't really have a good, clear understanding of that, so it was very helpful.
Yeah, they've been a really great partner for us, and I think she would become a commissioner if she lived in town, but she doesn't. But she's very active. She, you know, comes to the commission meetings when she can, and, you know, we're always looking to help strengthen what's going on with Wellstrong. And let me tell you, they have gone way beyond what I ever thought they would be doing, and they've just been hugely successful.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, just thank you so much for your
Again,
work.
thank you, Barbara.
So needed.
Thank you all.
Okay, next on our agenda is the FY24 operating budget policy, financial policy update, and capital plan presentation.
Good evening. If you don't mind, I wanted to start with the fiscal policy plan update, and then that kind of lays the groundwork for budget policy and the capital plan, if that works for everybody.
Yeah. I have some questions on the policy as well.
Okay, do you want to wait till I just go over it, or do you want to just ask now? It's up to
You go first.
Okay, so if everybody remembers, I was in front of you in January to discuss a vote that the board had taken regarding the policy of using the additional 1% rooms excise tax that town meeting had voted effective July 1st, taking those estimate of those monies, and then also the short-term rental allocation. And I was going to update the policies, which I have, to reflect the board's vote. So I'm just gonna try to this along here. Okay, so that's really the first slide. So that's really the change in the financial policy, the fiscal policy, is that we estimated the room occupancy tax to be about $350,000,
And then the short-term rental tax, about 500,000 each, 500,000 for the Affordable Housing Fund, and then 500,000 for school upgrades. So I updated those policies, and I also, we also put some wording in there to have a look-back period. So if we brought in additional monies from that, because these are all on estimates, so when we balance our budget or when we go to town meeting, we estimate the revenue and to cover the appropriations. So we're estimating what the revenue will be for FY '24. So you will see 850,000 as a town meeting warrant article to go to the Affordable Housing Fund in April. And the policies, if you had a chance to look at that.
Are we gonna comment as we go, or should we wait till the end? Or?
What do you prefer?
Well, Mr. Johnson Staub had asked me to kind of go over the fiscal policy because we had new board members, so I was just going to go over a big overview on it. There really weren't any changes to other parts of the policy, so it's really the board's wishes on how they want to proceed.
Well, I'd like to propose some changes. They're ordering changes, just to kind of broaden the scope. But why don't we go through it now?
Why don't we do yours? You go through it first, and then ask questions and make comments.
Okay, thank you. So back in 2017, we've developed some fiscal policies, and it really reflected some benchmarks, and in our policies, this is just a general, it's somewhat flexible of how the town operates financially and things that we need to really look at. So you have some broad goals. And in these policies, what we have done is we incorporate the dates in the charter and the bylaw into one document. So a lot of these dates and some of this wording comes directly from the town charter and the bylaws, so it's incorporated into the financial policies that you read here. The revenue policy, it's really a process for revenue estimates and revenue allocation. What you had voted in January is reflected here. That came under the revenue policy. There's a broad operating budget policy, and some of the wording in there, and you hear me say this every year, is avoiding using one-time revenues to fund ongoing operations. So in other words, one-time revenue for one-time expenses, reoccurring revenue for reoccurring expenses. That's written into the policy. And then it describes information that will be included in the budget document. It has an appropriation and expenditure policy. It lays out the annual town meetings, which is laid out in the charter. We have an annual town meeting in November and April. It has a capital stabilization policy that outlines the goals of that policy. And it also has wording in there which is kind of guides us on how we fund. Anything from $25,000 to $1 million, we try to use available funds. If it's over $1 million, we'll either use borrowing, capital exclusions, or available funds, depending on what our reserves are at the time. And then it has the debt policy, and as you know, we have debt drop-off. So whenever we bond an excluded debt project, when it goes to town meeting and then to the ballot, we've excluded it from Proposition 2.5. We try to pay the same amount every year. So as your debt drops off, because you're paying off your principal, the interest declines. So it really creates a window to put in new projects. We've been doing that for a number of years, and that really outlines that policy as well. So that's really what our fiscal policies are. So I can take any questions at this time.
Well, so with regard to the short-term rental tax, we did have a vote prior to a town meeting a couple of meetings ago, and we did vote at my request. The board considered it and did vote to put all the short-term rental to affordable housing. I know you didn't realize that we were going to do that, and you had already spoken with the school about allocating some of that, and you asked us to reconsider, and which we did, but I thought that we were just reconsidering it for that year and that we were going to revisit it. And now I see that the schools are getting an extra $1.5 million, and it seems to me a good time to revisit that, because just like your principle of recurring revenues for recurring debt, it's a principle thing where the short-term rentals are causing a housing problem, and it seems to me that it would be appropriate to fund that fully into affordable housing, unless that creates some sort of a budgeting problem for you. And I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into your works because you're the expert, but it just as a matter of principle, I feel that that's important. And I wonder if you feel like with the extra money coming from the date for the schools, maybe that's doable now?
Well, I will tell you that really that's a policy decision on the board. Basically, what you're saying is that you would rather not give the school department the $500,000 from short-term rental. You'd rather take it for affordable housing. And that's clearly a board's decision. It's not my decision.
Just as a matter of the fact that as the problem grows, the revenue for affordable housing grows, whereas it's a little different for the schools, plus they are in a better position this year.
I agree. The short-term rentals are having a huge impact on the accessibility of housing. I call it accessibility, because it's not for poor people, it's for,
And it's taken away houses directly from rental stock.
Yeah, and I know because in my neighborhood, that property sold for $1.2 million. The people are gonna vacation in it maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then they're gonna Airbnb or VRBO for the rest of the year. It's a business property, and it's no longer available for families anymore.
Right. And so we may, in the future, want to put an agenda item to discuss this separately. It's not to do with tonight's discussion, but we might need to have a moratorium on those because it's going to really, it's continuing to impact us. There's hundreds of them in Falmouth. Anyway, just...
Strategic.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
But I just wanted to make that point. I mean, I see we have it written in the policy. Is that really the policy that we want to keep? I don't know.
I think it should be revisited.
We don't have any action items on.
We would request that you
Yeah.
vote the policies. Maybe a suggestion, if you've decided not to allocate the $500,000 to the school department, you might want to reach out to them and let them know that.
Sure. Okay, we table this for 2 weeks for another meeting? Because I have some suggested modifications as well. And I'm happy to go over it, but we don't have to make a final decision, that's all. But, in years past, we've sort of kind of pushed this on through, but there's implications all the time. And I don't want to set precedents that aren't well-founded. And I think, Doug, you brought up a good example of that.
Can I just make one comment? This is the first time that I've brought this fiscal policy in front of you since 2017. So it's not
Exactly.
something that we haven't talked about every year. So from my standpoint, it doesn't stop the process of the capital plan or putting out directives of the operating budget if you wanted to table the overall fiscal policy.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that a motion?
Yes, well,
To table it, to
yeah, and-
revisit, or?
Yes, if we're going to have an opportunity to kind of look at some of the details of this and think about modifying them, I think I'm happy to.
Is that something we would take up on our Saturday meeting that's coming up? Or what is it?
So, we had one change that we needed to bring to the board to incorporate based on a vote you already took, and that was the initial idea behind having this policy on your agenda tonight. But as Ms. Mullen said, it's not an urgent matter. We can continue with the FY24 budget plan without necessarily updating the fiscal policy. However, the one piece that does relate to the FY24 budget planning process is the $500,000 for the school. We don't have to have a decision tonight necessarily, but that is a decision that we want to make, within the next month or so, so that,
That money was committed to the school department, am I correct?
Yeah, so I rewatched the meeting that we had in January because I wanted to make sure that I was reflecting the policies in the discussion of what the board discussed. And that's really what the board discussed and they approved in January. So if there's a change in that, it's up to the board. But I will say that we had a joint meeting, it was a few years ago. And so what happened was, when we had been looking for legislation for a number of years to tax the short-term rentals, and so when it finally came to fruition and we were able to do that, we were having a joint meeting with the school committee, and it came up about the additional revenue that the town would be getting from short-term rental. And I said, we hadn't received any funds yet, it had just been passed. And I said, it's really difficult to estimate the type of revenue that you're going to bring in. So, but once we start bringing in the revenue, we will look at it, and there would definitely be a school allocation. And they asked for a school allocation because, you know, it is general tax revenue, which we do share with the schools. And it's part of, you know, not to get into the excruciating details, it's part of your municipal revenue growth factor, which determines your net school spending. And so when you do have a large revenue source like that, it is prudent to share that with the school. And most towns do. And so everybody was on board with that we would share it with the school. We talked about, we reminded the board of that commitment in January. They were like, okay, we'll give it to the school. Now, if there's, you know, other discussions about it, I mean, that's really up to the board.
Well,
I would have a hard time not supporting giving the school part of that revenue stream.
the only thing is, we didn't know about it, and we had already voted to allocate it to affordable housing, not knowing about the
Well, and
arrangement
that
with
was
the
part of
school.
that's a really good point, because at that meeting, we didn't, at least I didn't know that there had been a meeting where that money had already been committed to the school. So I think at this point, my opinion is we can't pull it back. I wouldn't support pulling back from the school district.
Aren't we really talking about FY 2024?
Yes.
Right.
Not this current fiscal year and the budget.
Right, but
It's really looking at a year from now.
I understand that, but it will be a recurring revenue, tax revenue.
I understand.
And when we get an increase in tax revenue, my understanding is we give the school a certain amount of that. So even moving forward, I understand exactly what you're saying, Stan, but even moving forward, I don't think it would be prudent to not split that increase of revenue, tax revenue, between the school. And I'm all for the affordable housing piece. I'm also very much an advocate for the schools.
Well, I'm definitely an advocate for the schools, but I don't know that we have to take it out of this piece of money since it's sort of clearly oriented toward housing. And it just seems like, you know, why would we split it up? I mean,
It's an
the
increase-
schools are impacted by the affordable housing issue as well. I mean, we got kids that are, you know, living with grandparents because their parents can't afford to buy a home here. I mean, this is a big issue, but I just, you know, it would be just nice to say, okay, this is short-term rental tax. Let's apply it to the affordable housing or the accessible housing issue.
But it's an increase, where I'm stuck is it's an increase in tax revenue. And an increase, am I off base here? An increase in tax revenue, don't we?
It's
that to
not,
the schools?
yeah, I mean, we've had, traditionally what we do here is we have a very good relationship with the school department. If you look at other communities, not so much. You know, they jump into revenue sharing agreements. We do not have one here because we have a great relationship with the school department. So we've allocated in the past more than the 2.3%, which does come from your estimated receipts. But when you have a new tax revenue source, maybe not more, but a new one, you definitely want to share that with the school department because it's a new tax, it's rooms tax, it's part of your municipal revenue growth factor that is shared with the school when they come up with the net school spending. So it is prudent to, and fair, to share that. If the board so wishes to, you know, go in a different direction, it's up to the board. I'm just letting you know how we've handled it in the past.
So now, well, if you have something you want to share, go ahead.
Madam Chair? Yeah, I just want to echo what Ms. Mullin said, and it's not to be discounted that Falmouth has a long, very positive working relationship with the school committee. There are a lot of towns that have a lot of battles between school and town over funding, and whatever we do, I want to make sure that we dialogue with the school committee and school superintendent first, because I think we need to place a really high priority on maintaining that relationship.
Agreed, for sure.
Can I ask a question about the additional $1.5 million that they'll be receiving this year here in Falmouth for the school department? Because that's new revenue. Do they share that with the Affordable Housing Fund? I mean, you know what I mean?
Chapter 70.
No, it's Chapter 70.
It's Chapter
money.
70, it's
But it's-
school aid.
Right, but it's new revenue to them. I'm not expecting that they would. It's just a hypothetical question. But maybe when you talk to the school committee and the superintendent, you point out that with that new revenue, maybe they'd be willing to defer to the Affordable Housing Fund this other revenue that might not be as needed.
How can you say it's not needed? It's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's already been allocated to them. They depend on that money to operate, right?
This is
Not
next
thi-
year.
This year they are.
Well, in perpetuity, Sam.
But
I
they're
mean,
planning-
in perpetuity, if we don't set this money aside with an avenue to create it, there's a brand-new avenue to create money that we need to find for affordable housing. Why take away from a structure that's already set in place, and there's clearly a need?
Well, I advocated for this right from the beginning when this bill wasn't even passed yet, that we should focus on using this money for the Affordable Housing Fund. Spoken on it several times over the course of the last few years.
Not that that's not important.
Right, there are other priorities that are equally as important, and
I think taking
I
it
think
away
what-
from the school system
I don't think
personally
it's-
isn't the way to do that.
Okay, well, are we gonna fund, I guess it's further into the discussion, but are we gonna still fund the affordable housing initiatives at $4 million every year? Where's that money gonna come from? That's,
Take it away from the kids. Let's do that.
I'm just saying, are we serious about affordable housing? And are we gonna continue to fund the Affordable Housing Fund every year?
I think we are going to do our best to fund the Affordable Housing Fund. I'm not asking to take anything away from that.
Okay.
But there are also other competing priorities that have to be addressed as well. And at this point, even for FY '24, to say to the schools, no, you're not gonna get that, I would never go along with that.
Okay, well, we voted it previously, and we were asked to reconsider, and we did.
Because we didn't have all the information when we took the vote in the first place. So in my mind, that vote wasn't even valid. We didn't have information. I had no idea that the select board and the school committee had already met and they had come up with this issue.
The select
So-
board didn't.
My vote was useless. I thought they did have a joint.
No.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
The select board?
Yes, it was the select board and the school committee.
And that was explained to us.
We didn't talk
A
about
long
taxes.
time
and
ago.
We didn't talk about the short-term rental revenue during that meeting.
Yeah, well, so we did, and Megan English Braga jumped in. I just, I'm not here to, argue about history. Whatever you all want to do, vote, and you can do it. I do urge people, though, to at least watch the January meeting of when I presented and the discussion surrounding that, because it really does give clarity. And Megan English Braga was at that meeting with the joint meeting with the select board and the school committee, and she gave some really good insight that everybody seemed to agree with. That they're not agreeing now, but I just urge people to watch that meeting.
Okay, well.
I just want to say, I don't think we're trying to take away from the school department the education of our kids. These are long-term issues, both the affordable housing issue and educating our kids on a regular basis. The question becomes, how do we fund them with the available revenues, right? And so this one seems like the obvious offset for the accessible, the lack of affordable housing is this short-term rental industry. It's not taken away from the education program, it's taken away from the available housing for people in Falmouth. And so why not orient to this and then find the $500,000 to continue to support the school budget from another revenue stream?
Okay, we're going to have to have that.
That's the question. I mean, this seems like the logical thing is to kind of compartmentalize the funding of these programs.
We have heard our CFO say that it is a policy decision that we can make, but we're not going to make it here, and we're not going to make it tonight. We can bring it up again in strategic planning if we choose to do that, but the purpose of this meeting isn't necessarily to change that policy at this time.
Okay.
And I'm just presenting what the select board voted.
I
I'm
know.
not
Right.
I'm not recommending policy or
One way or the
anything.
other.
I'm just presenting what the select board voted in January. That's all I'm doing. So we can move on to the budget policy, if everybody read that. I do have that incorporated into the budget policy. I'm not sure how the board's gonna move forward, but I will mention that the budget policy should be voted tonight. We can do that. That's just for 1 year. You can make changes to it. I think both policies need to be voted, though. Well, the budget policy needs to be voted. Would be nice if it was voted tonight with the changes. Fiscal policy can wait, But we do need the policies voted in the next couple months, because I just want to remind everybody, we're going for a major bond issue in January, and these policies do affect our bond rating, so if we don't have voted policies, it creates a problem.
So you're talking about the fiscal year 2020 budget policy?
Yeah, that would be nice if we could vote that tonight.
Yeah. Well, I have some recommended changes to it, because it seems like in some of the statements there, we've overlooked some things, and it's a we. But on page 3, under the strategic priorities, the last sentence says, priority shall be placed on maintaining public health and safety and basic municipal services. I think we need to include economic vitality in there as well.
I don't have a pen with me, I'm sorry.
I have an extra one.
Where were we again? So
On
it's
page
the,
3, under strategic priorities, I think we need to, in that last sentence, we need to include economic vitality. A lot of things we do with our budget that impact economic vitality.
okay.
Now, under the fiscal policy, I'm sorry, it flips from to page 1. We've got down there, sustain the town's high AAA bond rating. And honest to goodness, I really have a problem with that, because
I think you're talking about the fiscal policy, we're talking about the budget policy.
Yeah, we're looking at operating budget policy.
all right, so that's it for the operating budget
Okay.
policy.
Okay. Okay, now you're going on to fiscal policy?
Well, you said that
Well,
you
we're
want to
gonna
wait
table
on
that,
this.
right?
Yeah, we'll table that. I didn't realize we jumped. So that's the only thing I saw that I thought we needed to keep in our vision of what this policy covers.
Are there any questions or comments or changes to the budget policy?
I would move that we approve the budget policy as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with the amendment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Let me pull up the,
I'm not sure if my pages are in order. Is the budget policy only 2 pages?
That's right. 3, yeah.
Yeah, 3 pages.
3 pages.
3
it's
pages. 1, 2, 3.
Introduction.
Back to back.
back and,
2
yeah.
pages.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then it starts, page number starts number 1 for the fiscal policy. Do you want to table the fiscal policy till our strategic planning section? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm with that.
Okay, so are we ready for the capital plan?
Sure.
Okay, so let's vote that we're going to, we have a motion to table the fiscal policy.
Second.
I thought did you make the motion?
I'll move to table it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of tabling the fiscal policy until a strategic planning meeting?
Aye.
Yes, I'll take that in just 1 second. However, when we do that, I'd want to make sure that you are at that strategic planning meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know there's some question about, yes. I'm sorry?
We haven't,
We haven't done the consent agenda yet.
can we just put this off in the meeting so this gentleman can go home? The capital budget? At least clear that out of the way, because the consent agenda should be pretty straightforward.
I would say that unless somebody's going to hold that item on the consent agenda, we'll just vote the consent agenda when we're ready. I don't want to interrupt this, but I don't think you need to worry. It's on the consent agenda,
Yeah,
correct?
It should be fine.
I have no plans to hold it.
Okay, no one's going to hold it, so.
I think you're good.
Thank you.
All right, back to.
I'm sorry,
Thanks,
Jennifer.
Mark.
It's okay.
Back to the capital improvement plan.
So also as part of your packet was the capital plan. And so I was just going to go over the major initiatives in the capital plan and take any questions. It has a lot of backup in this capital plan and has narratives from the department heads. So the major initiatives, for the new Hatchville Fire Station, you have fire apparatus, a new fire engine, and an ambulance we have incorporated in there. We will be using the monies, the recommendation is to take it from the Capital Stabilization Fund to buy that apparatus. We're going to work on the West Falmouth boat ramp. That was a capital initiative from the MES department. We're going to replace the library windows. That has been discussed now for years. We're actually looking at a design, picking an architect, and we will look at replacing those next year. The road maintenance budget has gone up significantly. We're recommending 1.6 million. Costs have gone up, but also we want to do a little bit more as well. Water upgrades, let me just spend a minute on this. As you recall, we had requested an earmark of $250,000 from the legislature from ARPA funding, and Senator Moran was, put that forth for us, and we got that earmark. So that $250,000 is for design of water mains. So we're looking at voting in April as a separate article, a borrowing article, to replace water mains. We haven't had one of those, how to replace water mains article in a while. But with the earmark and with the ARPA funding, we feel that obviously we're ready. One of the reasons we were a little bit slow on replacing more water mains is we had a major initiative on Main Street. As you recall, when Steve Rafferty retired, and then it took a while to bring in a new water superintendent. So actually, the capital projects just slowed down a little bit, but we're looking at, ramping that up again, because as you know, we have very old water mains that we want to replace. So I just wanted to let you all know about that. Additional assessment and design for the Woods Hole force main, that is in there as well. We have funds in there for coastal erosion repair and maintenance on Chappaquiddick Road. It's from the engineering department. We have some design for the pickleball courts. That has been a major initiative from the rec department. So turf field design for Trotting Park Road, and in the high school, they want to replace 8 tennis courts. So we have a capital item in there for 1. And that's really the highlight of the initiatives that we're looking at this year. And the funding, 1.6 from the Capital Stabilization Fund for the fire apparatus. We'll use about 7.8 million in free cash. We're going to use 200,000 from overlay surplus. That's actually going to fund the revaluation that the assessor's office does. And then 36,000 from a utility software article that has been left over. We're looking at online licensing software for the select. So those are some of our initiatives that we're looking at. We provide a lot of detail in the packet, and I'm here to be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't have questions. I just wanted to comment. I'm happy to see the extra money in the roads planning, because I felt like some of those were some of the things that might have been identified by the Transportation Committee as they were researching that. So it's good to see that that's being addressed.
I have a question about the whole coastal resiliency issues that have been raised, and when we're going to see some money put into planning.
That's a question for the town manager.
Excuse me?
Right, so that, we're going to talk about that at strategic planning session.
Okay.
Yep.
You didn't mention any of that, so, right.
We don't, at this time, we don't have funds other than we have some money for the force main evaluation at Woods Hole, so that's a coastal resilience project, but that's the only capital funding for specific coastal erosion, coastal resilience initiatives that we have in the capital plan at this time.
Okay.
Very nice. I love those glossy photos of the new vehicles.
Oh, good. So I think, so is that it? If you could vote the capital plan, I can move that on to the Finance Committee, and they can start their work for town meeting.
Any questions or comments on the capital plan?
No, it's well done and easy to read and very understandable.
Good justification.
I would move approval of the capital improvement plan.
Second.
And I'm happy to see that we have the apparatus and the ambulance for the Hatchville station.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the capital improvement plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Jennifer, could you send us or at least send me your slides so that we can have those when we do our strategic planning, or bring them
Absolutely.
with you. I think it would just be helpful.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will.
And there was Amy.
Okay, Barnstable County ARPA grant applications.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. So you have a memo from me overviewing the county ARPA fund situation. The county has received 41.3 million in total funds. They have not yet distributed all those funds or made them available. What they've done is they allocated $10 million that's available for municipalities to apply for, and Falmouth has applied for our maximum under that allocation, and the Select Board has authorized that grant application already for the wastewater treatment upgrades. And more recently, the county voted to make available $5 million for smaller grants, and that round of funding is open to municipalities as well as nonprofits. And I am recommending, at the suggestion of the Water Quality Management Committee in consultation with Amy Lowell, a $500,000 application for design of the T-Ticket Acapesket sewer collection system. So that one is fairly straightforward, fits neatly into the funding that the county has made available. I was also encouraged to engage the board in a conversation about going beyond what the county has invited for grant applications, to sort of proactively apply for funding that's not been made available by the county yet, to make a statement that, hey, we're ready to go. We have good projects lined up that are important, and we can put this money to use now. We'd rather the county not sit on that money and just wait and think about, what they might do next for allocating those funds. I would mention that the ARPA funding has to be committed. I believe it's by the end of calendar year 2024, and they must be expended by the end of calendar year 2026. So that's a couple of years down the road, but as the board is aware, it takes a couple of years to get these projects designed and bid out and, break the ground and start spending the money. So that what may seem like, a few years may seem like a lot of time, but it actually isn't.
Well, thank you.
So do you need us to vote for authorizing additional applications?
I do. I would need a vote, and I would just ask, I have one clarification to the second grant proposal to make, which would give us in talking again with Amy Lowell and Jennifer Mullen, if we could make that second application for T-Ticket Acapesket collection system construction, $4.2 million, if we could actually make that for design and construction, because we do believe that we will be underway, but to give us a greater comfort level that those funds will actually be expended by the end of calendar 2026, it would help to be able to have the option to spend that money both on design and construction.
And you might have some field design work to go as you go along.
And some detailed designs.
There goes my East Falmouth sewer main, but this is a good idea to get this going.
I'll say. Thanks for getting it into the hopper, so I would be happy to move that we authorize submitting the applications for the T-Ticket Acapesket wastewater collection system design, and for the second phase, that's for $500,000, and the second part being the T-Ticket Acapesket system detail design and construction for $4,200,000.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I will abstain. Just because of the letter, the recommendation letter from wastewater quality.
Sorry, we were glad to get it.
Yes, okay.
And
Okay, anything else? Okay, let's move on to the.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much, and thanks for staying with us. Okay, I'm going to go through the consent agenda. Please, if there's anything that you want to talk about, please hold the item.
Before you do,
Yes.
they've been putting the minutes under the consent agenda, and we always have edits, but we don't even have those minutes this time.
Correct.
But in the future, can't we just keep that out as a separate agenda item? So when you ask the question, I don't want to have to hold those out.
Are they in the consent agenda? I see them as number 5 on the bottom, review and vote to approve
Well,
minutes of
well,
meetings. Do I have it wrong?
You might
No, I
be
think-
right, but
I
it
think
comes,
Sam's right.
the way it's printed out here, number 5 of it says consent agenda underneath, review and vote to approve minutes of meetings. I guess it's just a question of it being put on this cover sheet. And, pardon me?
We can format it differently so that it's not on the consent agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all I'm
it
asking.
should not be.
Thank you.
Agreed. Okay. A, approve application for inn-holder license, entertainment license, and Sunday entertainment license, Wagner Hospitality Management, LLC, doing business as the Holiday Inn located at 291 Jones Road in Falmouth. Application approval for a secondhand dealer license, Blooming Resale, 577 North Falmouth Highway Boulevard, B, North Falmouth. Approve application for an administrative change of address of a wine and malt common victual license, Silver Beach Pizza and Seafood, located at 557 North Falmouth Highway Boulevard, A, North Falmouth. Approve application for a special one-day all-alcohol liquor license, Falmouth Theater Guild, located at 58 Highfield Drive, on Falmouth, September 9th, and Saturday, September 10th. Approve application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license, Really Rad Festival of Cyclocross, WM Cycling Events, Inc., Cape Cod Fairgrounds, Saturday, November 5th, and Sunday, November 6th, 2022. Approve application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license, Cape Cod Bocce Tournament at the Joe Q Veteran Coffee Break, Falmouth Academy, Saturday, October 1, 2022. Approve grant of license to Michael and Joanne Roof to maintain a fence and a garden located in the town right-of-way at 100 Bridge Street, pending town council approval and verbiage. Okay, hearing no items held.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approve 2020 seasonal annual license renewal second-hand dealer license, Cape Kids Treasures, 2 pop-up consignment events per year.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'm curious as to why that wasn't just listed as another under the consent agenda. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, we'll go on to administrative orders. Approve mortgage refinance for 27 Mill Farm Way, Unit 16.
I thought you were just asking for holds. Are you asking for holds?
We're on administrative orders. Does anyone have
Oh, no,
any
but-
questions, comments?
Nope, I thought that was under the
Okay.
consent agenda also.
Is it? I don't, it is, you're right. I don't really like the way it's set up.
I
Okay.
don't like it either, that's what I was
Yeah, it's
concerned about.
confusing.
We need to at
Okay.
least separate out the review of minutes.
Approve request for sign variance, Cape Cod Roar, placement of promotional banner at St. Barnabas Church Lawn, 91 Main Street, September 1 through September 12th, 2022. Approve request for variance to sign code 18420 of off-premise sandwich board style promotional signs for the Falmouth Rotary Club Craft Fair, August 29th through September 4th, 2022. Approve expenditure from the beach donations account in the amount of $500 for the Dr. Dave Garber Dare to Be Great Award. Accept a donation in the amount of $1,500 from the Falmouth Road Race, Inc. to the beach donations account to fund the annual banquet. Accept a donation in the amount of $2,000 from Paul Muskowski to the beach donations account to fund the annual banquet. Accept a donation in the amount of $1,900 from the New England Endurance Events to the beach donations account. Approve expenditure from the beach donations account in the amount of $5,667.60 to fund the beach department's annual staff awards banquet. Authorized letter to Attorney General Maura Healey urging action to prevent Holtec from dumping radioactive water into the Cape Cod Bay.
I move approval. And with gratitude to the donors.
Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote reappointments of certified weighers.
I move approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we do not have any minutes of the meetings for the public session, July 25th, 2022, correct? Okay,
We will have them.
okay. Town manager's supplemental report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to mention the wind turbine demolition is proceeding. It is a complicated process, and there have been some delays with respect to working out the Eversource disconnection of power, and also wanting to make sure that we have a carefully thought-out safety plan in place before we begin the demolition process. But that is moving forward. Eversource is scheduled to disconnect the power later this month, and there will be a notice to abutters of a range of dates that the turbines will actually come down, so that there's a safety warning. So that is moving forward. Beach Department has started to lose some staff members, as is typical this time of year. However, we're not losing them quite as quickly as we have in the past, thanks to the retention bonus that was instituted this year. But I do want to say that Superintendent Maggie Clayton and the beach staff have done a terrific job, and they had some challenges early on with some issues at the beaches in the early spring, but they have really done well through a busy season, and things have gone pretty well so far, and we have a couple more weeks that I'm sure will continue to go smoothly. Similarly, the Recreation Department, we're not supposed to use the word camp for municipalities because we're not licensed officially as a camp, but the summer adventure program that is run by the Recreation Department is a very important service for working families. And Joe, because of the COVID disruptions, there weren't as many experienced staff counselors to run that program this year. So it was an extra challenge to Recreation Director Joe Olenek, and he got through the season successfully, so I'm very appreciative of his efforts. Some staffing updates. The Assistant Library Director position has been filled. The Assistant Recreation Director position has been filled. And the Administrative Assistant Paralegal position in the Town Council office has been filled as well. So 3 steps forward.
Are any of those Falmouth residents?
I know that the Assistant Library Director is coming from Brooklyn, New York. I don't recall off the top of my head the other two.
That's a tough commute.
Commuting.
Yeah.
Well, I spoke to the candidate about the housing costs here, and I was starting to, let him know that housing is pretty expensive here, and then he explained he was coming from Brooklyn, and I said, well, as I was saying, housing is very affordable here in Falmouth. By comparison. The principal office assistant for the Conservation Department has resigned, so we have another vacancy to fill. And HR director interviews are beginning this week. I don't expect we'll have a hiring decision, before a month. That process will take some time, but the interviews have begun. And your next meeting is this coming Saturday, August 27th. I believe the chair may be saying a few words about that in a minute. We have another Saturday meeting, September 10th, and a regular meeting, September 12th and September 26th. And then a last Saturday meeting to finish the strategic planning process on October 1st. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Select Board reports.
Well, as mentioned earlier, I attended the road race, and I also attended their gathering for their 50th celebration on Monday evening. It's a fun group of folks that really work hard to make that a great event. I attended the West Falmouth Village Association's annual meeting this past week, and it went really well. It was some appreciation for the fact that we seem to have addressed the policies for the fire department staffing. A little bit of concern raised about the fact that the new station's being built and whether or not we'll have enough people, but it's understandable concerns and no great, not overly concerned, but just still that it's a conversation. They were more concerned about the pollution in the waters, and Scott McGann was present to give a really good explanation of the testing protocols and how it all works, and it was very interesting, and he was very informative. I attended the beach banquet, and thank you, Peter, for attending that as well. I know that was really appreciated by the beach committee staff. And thanks to Paul Moskovsky, the Falmouth Road Race, New England Endurance Advance. I mean, all these big, giant donations to make that banquet happen. And it's so important for those kids. And if you see the time and effort they put in, it's like going to a prom. They wear these formal dresses, and really, you can tell how important it is to them. And the speeches and the letters that they write, it was a great experience. So I really liked going to that. And I attended the Bands of Badges concert on Saturday last week. That's another great fundraising event, which helps military and first responders in a time of need when they're going through a personal crisis or whatever they can do to help those folks. And that's about it for me this week.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Patterson?
Yes, yeah, and I just want to say that I really appreciate the road race committee and their contributions to the town in so many ways, the many youth groups that they support. Scouts were out volunteering to help out. So it was really well done. I actually had a conversation with Chief of Police Ed Dunn this morning and asking him how it went from his perspective. And he did say that there were quite a few runners that suffered from hyperthermia, and collapsed en route. And he had some difficulties getting water in later after the race to provide people with adequate hydration. And so I think they have some issues on managing the traffic because there were too many people parking all over the place and blocking, public safety officials from getting in and out. So I would just suggest that the road race committee take a closer look, and perhaps the police and DPW need to think about access routes in situations where we have people who are suffering from health issues. But he did indicate there were, because of the weather, the high humidity, were greatly impacted by it. So that I did attend that. This all came up during the Coffee with a Cop at Pegnet Moon Park this morning. I did manage to get there, let's see. So I covered basically the conversation I had then. I did run into somebody else though, and I wanted to mention and request that we ask the Friends of Knobska Light board to come in on a future agenda item to just give us an update on the progress of their work with the Knobska Light, because we haven't had them on board. I think work is moving along, but there are some issues, and one of them that was raised to me today, which I hope we can address. There's the parking area in front of the lighthouse is actually town property, and we've actually maintained the asphalt on that piece of property. It's part of the roadway apparently, but they were saying that people are coming there and parking their cars for 6 or 7 hours, and there's only like 5 or 6 spaces there, and it's basically blocking access for anybody that might want to actually visit the light property. There's not there's no occupancy permit that allows people to go into the lighthouse, but the grounds are there so people can walk around. But people can't even get to the kiosk that gives some of the information about Knobska and where they could donate to it and what have you. So anyway, so those are the 2 items that came out relative to Knobska and the Friends of Knobska and managing the facility. They are making progress. They plan to do some site work to try to eventually get things squared away so there'll be handicap accessibility to the property. It's been a fundraising challenge, and they just haven't been able to keep up with it. So, but if we could get them to come and give a presentation, it might, generate some additional contributions to support their efforts. The one thing I wanted to mention to you that came up to me when I was talking with them, the town is due to, at some point, to take that property over from the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is in the process of evaluating. They've been doing this across the country because they don't want to maintain these lighthouse properties anymore. They've got so many other ways to navigate, for people to use navigation. But are we preparing, I guess is the question I have, for taking over that property? I mean, we have Tony Andrews Farm, we've got Highfield Hall, we've got other properties that are run by third-party not-for-profits. But are we thinking about, the management issues associated with having that be a municipal property? Throw it out there.
My understanding has been that and I could be mistaken, but my understanding has been that once that transfer takes place, we would be looking to hand over, basically continue the arrangement
The lease.
with the lease,
Right.
so that it continues to be the nonprofit Knobska Light Board that is managing the property. But I will need to confer with town council to see if we need to go through a procurement process. I imagine we probably do.
All right, I just wanted to make, it's not eminent that I know of, but I know that the Coast Guard has assured the Friends of Knobska Light Board that they're working on this. And so it's just a matter of them getting through the process. But once that happens, then all of a sudden it's going to get dropped on the town, and we need to be prepared to handle it.
Right.
Thank you, that's it.
All set. Ms. Price? Good. Nothing this week. Mrs.
I
Lindsay?
just want to commend whoever cleaned up after the road race. I took a tour for about an hour riding around the affected areas, and by 3:30, 4 o'clock, everything was back in really good shape. So I commend those involved with that endeavor.
Lots of people, lots of volunteers.
All set?
For me.
Okay, so I just have one thing, and that is, I'm going to ask all board members to, in an attempt to really focus our conversation beginning on Saturday, I'd like you to really take a look at the old strategic plan, and if your top 5 goals, what are your top 5 goals that you think are the most important priorities for Falmouth? And I'm going to ask that you use the SMART method. Is the goal, is it specific, is it measurable, is it attainable, is it relevant, and what does the timing look like? And I'd like you to get your 5 goals to me by Thursday, because I really want to be able to focus and use our time really well on Saturday. For example, and I just started to think, okay, well, give them an example. What are you talking about? So if I think about an overarching goal being public safety, well, what does that mean? You have this, we all have our own idea about what that means. But underneath that overarching goal, what are some specific pieces that we need to take a look at? And so as I started to write my goal, I thought, okay, what's happening with removal from civil service? And you might say, well, how does that impact public safety? Well, in my conversations with the chief, hiring would be much easier for him. He's down 17 officers, and there are 7 he could bring on fairly quickly if we could do as town meeting had voted. Another piece would be staffing the fire stations, re-looking at the policy. What are the budget implications? And then my last one, again, just in terms of looking at the broad goal and what are the pieces of that goal that I really want to see move forward, is really taking a look at clinicians for the Falmouth Police Department. And as you're thinking about your goals, making sure that if your goals impact the budget, which obviously, they're going to do, making sure that you note that so that we can have those conversations. And so as we're talking about policies and fiscal policies, we can always keep in mind what the budget impacts would be in terms of achieving our goals. Does that make sense?
But our fiscal policy is going to be part of this agenda on Saturday?
Yeah, yes.
That's a piece of it, right?
Yes, we should have the fiscal policy. And I'm meeting actually with Peter tomorrow to really tighten up an agenda so that we can make sure that we have a real focused conversation. Any questions? And again, everything that you send me, I will sort of collate and look at where the goals are the same. And we'll try to really start a focused conversation and a productive conversation on Saturday. That's all I have.
Sounds good.
You have that SMART definitions down that you can send to us, that you want us to kind of focus on?
I'll send out a copy of the strategic plan, and I'll include the SMART definition with that as well.
Yeah, and I just, here, if you just want to take it right off that, you can. Good point, Sam. And then the only other thing, if there aren't any other board reports, when we think about discussion of future agenda items, I received an email from the Falmouth Heights Mara Vista Village Association asking, what really is going on with the Mayflower Wind Project, and I want to make sure that we address that as an agenda item moving forward. Even to say that there isn't much going on and that we don't have any new information, right? I think we need to make sure that we say that publicly, and that at this time, unless the board or certainly Mr. Johnson-Straub disagrees, I'm not sure it's time to have an additional public forum. I'm not sure there's anything new to address.
Agreed.
But I think we need to say that publicly, because I've been asked about it quite a bit.
At least to keep them up to speed that there is nothing going.
Right.
I can certainly understand their apprehension. 'Cause we met
Absolutely.
so many times in executive session, expecting to have substantive conversations, but they didn't really
We really have,
materialize.
yeah.
And you haven't had any meetings on this issue since the last public forum.
Right.
Right.
And I think it's really important to just really put that out there. And even if it's just something in your report, because we don't have anything to report.
Mr. Pozanowski's sent out the urgent message that we have something before everybody goes back to Florida or Arizona or wherever they go. But I don't think that we can hold up for that, or that it's going to get done in time, or that we can guarantee they're going to be here. I mean, we can send them the notice as we would to any resident, but this business has to go on expeditiously.
But we can still issue an update, a statement.
Sure.
Right.
You know,
To say, exactly.
this is what we know, this is where we're at.
Absolutely.
Right, and that we won't be having a public forum until we have something to say or we have additional information. Okay.
I do hope that we'll get more correspondence from Mayflower Wind and not have to find out information related to their actions through third parties.
Okay, I
would
will
be nice.
entertain a motion to adjourn unless, anything else? We good?
I'll gladly move that.
Second.
We don't have, do we have future agenda item requests on here?
Well, I gave you the
I just
one.
did mine.
Okay.
I didn't know if anybody
I
else.
gave you that one
You
about,
gave the lighthouse?
yeah, but to ask that maybe they come and give us a status report. Since they're watching that and tracking it, and they've got other things going on that site, so it might be nice to have an update for the public's.
I would like to address the short-term rental issue again and decide whether or not we want to consider any action or what our action considerations might be.
Whether this
We'll
is,
talk about that in strategic planning as well, right?
Yeah,
And bring
but
the
also in the
policy.
future, I'd
Yeah,
like to have a
that's fine.
consideration for a regular
but we,
agenda item.
but we also need to be working with the school department. And we're not gonna pull it right out from under them. If this is a good time for them to, apply some other revenue, well, maybe it's a good transition point, but we wanna do this together.
Right.
And
Well-
we don't wanna slight, and if they've got, I know they're struggling to get kids back on track because of the COVID issues. And then we keep reading about all this host of mental issues that went along with all of that. So I know they have plenty of problems, and they can easily apply that money, but it would be nice to hear whether, all right, well, we've got ARPA money that can get us through this next year, let's talk about future years.
I agree.
Or that we've got other revenue for affordable housing.
Or, right, that'd be even better.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.